The city burned behind them. Jonah stood on the broken causeway at dawn, watching black smoke coil above the skyline. The second fire had gutted the archives, its embers still glowing in the early light. He pressed the ledger tight to his chest, the blood on its cover stiff and dark. Each page inside felt heavier than stone. Beside him, Naya leaned on her crutch, face streaked with soot. She spat into the dust, eyes never leaving the horizon. Coal has the soldiers. Shadow has the zealots. And all we've got is ashes. Carla adjusted the straps of her transmitter, sparks faintly crackling through the coils. Ashes are proof. The city saw the fire. They saw him twist prophecy. But if we stay, Cole burns us next. We need answers. Somewhere he can't reach. Jonah's gaze drifted north, where mountains cut the horizon into jagged teeth. Safia's words still echoed in his skull. Seek the mountain, seek the spring. What if she lied? Jonah murmured. What if it's just another prophecy, another chain? Naya's scar caught the light as she turned toward him. Then we break it when we find it. But right now, it's the only path we've got. Behind them, survivors straggled from the city, families carrying bowls like relics, deserters dragging wounded comrades, children clutching ashes from the bell as keepsakes. Not many. Not enough to call an army. But they followed Jonah, their eyes fixed on the ledger in his hands. Carla noticed it too. They think you're leading them, she said softly. Jonah's jaw tightened. He opened the ledger and scrawled with a trembling hand. Second fire burned memory. Watcher spoke of mountain. Few follow. Burden grows. He snapped it shut. Then we keep moving. The road out of the city was lined with ruin. Burnt houses, blackened bowls scattered in the dirt, wardens' banners torn to shreds. Sometimes the smoke parted to show families kneeling, giving their blood tithe before firing squads. Jonah forced himself not to look. By midday the exodus reached the river. The bridge had collapsed, its spine snapped by fire. Only a few planks dangled above the rushing water. Naya tested it with her crutch. Too many bodies and it falls. Carla eyed the survivors. Then what? Leave them behind. Jonah looked at the ledger, at the names scrawled across its pages. His blood smeared fresh ink as he wrote. If they fall, memory falls. He shoved the book into his coat and stepped onto the planks. The wood groaned beneath his weight, spray cold against his face. Survivors gasped. Some prayed. But one by one they followed, bowls clanging nervously against belts. Halfway across the bell tolled. Faint at first, then louder, carried on horns hidden in the hills. Shadows rippled across the riverbank, wardens. They marched from the treeline, rifles glinting in the sun. Carla cursed, throwing her rig onto the bridge. They'll gun us down in the water. Naya planted herself at the edge, crutch raised like a spear. Then we make them choke on noise. Survivors raised bowls, striking them with spoons, sticks, even their bare hands. The bridge thundered with sound louder than the river. Children screamed it into the sky. Wardens hesitated. Some steadied rifles, others faltered. The captain raised his pistol. Jonah lifted the ledger high, his voice cracking but clear. We are not prophecy. We are not fire. We are memory and we cross. The bowls roared in answer. The wardens fired. Bullets ripped through wood. Planks shattered, bodies plunged into the torrent. Screams rose with the spray. Jonah lunged forward, grabbing a child's arm, dragging him across. Naya swung her crutch, knocking a soldier into the current. Carla slammed her rig's coils together, sparks bursting like lightning, blinding the line of rifles. By dusk, the survivors reached the far bank, drenched, bloodied, but alive. Behind them, the bridge collapsed into the river with a final thunderous crack. Jonah fell to his knees, ledger pressed against his chest, water dripping from its soaked pages. He scrawled with shaking hands. Bridge broken. City behind us. Noise carried us across. Mountain ahead. He closed it slowly, lifting his eyes to the peaks rising against the red sky. For the first time since the bell shattered, hope and dread felt the same. The mountains rose like teeth against the sky. By the second day, the survivors had left the smoke of the city behind, but not its weight. They trudged along stony paths, bowls clattering at their belts, eyes hollow from hunger and grief. The river roared far below, a silver ribbon cutting through the gorge. Jonah walked at the front, the ledger bound tight in cloth to keep it dry. Every step felt heavier, as though the book itself grew denser with each name, each memory written in blood. He glanced back at the column of people and wondered how many of them believed in memory, how many in prophecy, and how many just followed because turning back meant death. Naya limped behind him, her crutch leaving deep marks in the dust. She muttered curses at the slope, at the rocks, at the sun itself. If this watcher lied, she rasped, I'll break her teeth with this stick. Carla trudged beside her, transmitter strapped across her shoulders, sparks still twitching from the coils. She scanned the cliffs warily. Wardens won't stop at the river. Cole will hunt us. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But he won't let noise escape his walls. Jonah said nothing. His eyes were on the peaks ahead, where clouds gathered thick and black. Thunder rumbled through the valley, echoing like a drumbeat. By dusk, the survivors found shelter in a ravine. A half-collapsed watchtower jutted from the cliffs, its stones older than the city itself. Moss crept over carvings long faded by rain. The children were the first to see it. They traced fingers over the worn designs, eyes wide. It's the bell, one whispered. Jonah froze. He moved closer, brushing away dirt. The carving revealed not a bell, but a circle of bowls arranged around a spring. Lines radiated outward like sound waves. Beneath it, a doubled cross and two serpents twined together. Carla crouched, adjusting the dim light from her rig. This is older than Cole. Older than the bell in the square. Whatever the watcher meant, it started here. Naya slammed her crutch against the stone. Then maybe it ends here too. Jonah pressed his rook-scarred palm against the carving. The stone was cool, but beneath it he swore he felt a pulse, faint like water flowing under rock. His heart hammered in rhythm. He opened the ledger with trembling fingers and scrawled. Carving found. Bowls around a spring. Symbols older than city. Memory deeper than stone. The survivors murmured prayers. Some called it a miracle, others a warning. A few knelt, clutching bowls against the carving as if it were an altar. But not all were convinced. A man in the crowd shouted, "This proves prophecy." The shadow spoke of springs in the mountain. His words are carved here. Others argued back, voices rising, bowls striking in anger. The ravine echoed with clashing iron, not in unity but in discord. Jonah slammed the ledger shut, voice raw. This is not prophecy. These stones remember, they do not foretell. The watchers may twist it, but memory came first. The crowd fell uneasy, muttering. Some lowered their bowls. Others whispered the shadow's name in fear. Carla leaned close, voice low. If we can't hold them together now, Jonah, Cole won't have to kill us. We'll tear ourselves apart. Naya stepped between the bickering groups, crutch raised like a staff. Shut it. You want to die on this mountain, arguing over which tyrant owns you? The only thing that owns us is survival. And if you can't stomach that, step off the cliff now. Silence smothered the ravine. Jonah breathed hard, sweat chilling on his skin. He pressed the ledger to his chest. Safia's voice echoed again in his mind, seek the spring. And for the first time he believed the spring might be real. That night, as the survivors huddled by weak fires, Jonah dreamed. He stood in a cavern lit by water that glowed faint blue. Bowls lined the walls, carved into the rock, ringing softly though no hand touched them. At the center, a pool shimmered, and from it rose voices, not one but many whispering names. He reached for the water. The ledger in his hands dripped ink into the pool, and the surface rippled with fire. From the shadows the watcher appeared. Her indigo veil shimmered with starlight, her eyes sharp. The spring does not give prophecy, she whispered. It remembers what was lost. But memory has a price. Jonah jerked awake, breath ragged. The fire was low, the survivors asleep. But he felt the ledger heavier against his chest, as though it too had dreamed. He wrote with a shaking hand. Dream of the spring. Voices whispered names. Watcher warned, memory has a price. He shut the book, staring into the dark where the mountains loomed higher, waiting. And he knew, the spring was not just water. It was truth buried in stone. The storm came with no warning. By the third night in the mountains, thunder cracked like cannons overhead. Rain poured down the cliffs in torrents, turning the paths to rivers of mud. Survivors huddled beneath makeshift tarps, bowls clanging as they were battered by wind. Jonah pressed the ledger beneath his coat, though water still seeped in. Each drop blurred ink and smeared names. He clenched it tighter, heart pounding. If the pages wash away, he whispered, do they vanish from memory too? Naya cursed at the storm, her crutch sinking into mud with every step. If the mountain wants us dead, it's welcome to try. I'll break its teeth too. Carla fought to keep her rig dry, sparks spitting from the coils. If we lose this signal, we go blind. Cole's wardens could be anywhere. She was right. By dawn the storm cleared, but the mud told its story. Tracks dozens of boots, heavy and precise, cutting across their path. Wardens. The survivors froze when Jonah raised his hand. The tracks led uphill toward a narrow pass between cliffs. And from the distance came the faint, metallic rhythm of marching. "They've cut us off," Carla hissed. Panic spread. Families clutched children, some trying to scatter into the rocks. Jonah's chest clenched. If they broke now, they would be slaughtered piecemeal. He opened the ledger with trembling fingers, blood from his rook-cut palm mixing with rain on the page. He wrote desperately. "Warden's hunt. Storm broke path. Fear splits us." The ink ran, letters blurring. For the first time, the book resisted him, as though it too feared what was coming. The march grew louder. Black visors appeared above the ridge, rifles gleaming in morning light. Carla's eyes went wide. "We can't outrun them." Naya planted her crutch, shoulders squared. "Then we don't. We make noise until the mountain itself remembers us." She struck her crutch against the rock. A deep clang rang out, echoing through the gorge. Survivors followed, bowls raised, striking stone until the cliffs thundered with sound. But rifles still rose. Jonah's heart hammered. He gripped the ledger, flipping to a blank page. His hand bled freely onto the parchment as he whispered, "If memory has power, then let it live." He scrawled, wild and desperate. Noise filled the gorge. Echo broke the stone. Path closed. The page pulsed under his hand. For a heartbeat, the ink glowed red. And then the mountain answered. A rumble shook the cliffs. Stones split. A sheet of rock thundered down across the pass, crashing into the warden's line. Screams echoed as soldiers scattered, buried beneath rubble and dust. The gorge filled with choking smoke, muffling gunfire into silence. The survivors stared, bowls frozen mid-strike. Some gasped in awe, others in terror. Jonah fell to his knees, the ledger smoking faintly in his hands. His blood smeared across the page, ink running with it. Carla's voice broke, half whisper, half accusation. You didn't just write memory. You made it happen." Naya's scar caught the dim light, her grin sharp. "Good. About time the book stopped recording and started fighting." But Jonah's stomach turned cold. He traced the blurred words, whispering, "No. I only wrote what might have been. The mountain did the rest." Carla's eyes narrowed. Or the book did. The survivors began to murmur. Some fell to their knees, calling Jonah's act prophecy fulfilled. Others struck bowls, claiming memory had spoken louder than steel. Division crackled through the air like lightning. Jonah shut the ledger hard, pressing it against his chest. This was not prophecy. It was survival. Nothing more. But even as he spoke, he felt the rook's scar burn hotter than ever. That night, they camped in silence, too shaken to sing or strike bowls. The children huddled close, whispering about the mountain falling at Jonah's command. The adults argued in hushed tones, some calling him chosen, others warning he was no different from the shadow. Jonah sat apart, staring at the soaked ledger. He opened to the last page he had written. The words had dried into black scars across the paper. Noise filled the gorge. Echo broke the stone. Path closed. He pressed his head into his hands. Safia's voice returned like a whisper in the storm. Memory has a price. For the first time he feared he was already paying it. The mountain path narrowed until it felt like a scar across the stone. On the fourth day, the survivors climbed single file along a ledge no wider than 2 men, the abyss yawning beneath them. Mist rose from the valley floor, curling around their feet like ghosts. Every clang of bowls tied to belts echoed against the cliffs, a reminder that even silence could not erase who they were. Jonah led, the ledger bound tight in cloth, water stains marking its edges. His palm throbbed where the rook's scar burned, a reminder of the gorge, of how stone itself had obeyed his words. Behind him, Naya limped steady, crutch wedged into crevices, her scar catching the weak sunlight. She muttered curses at every slip of gravel. "If the Watcher sent us here for prophecy, I'll get her myself." Carla followed, transmitter slung across her shoulders, sparks twitching faintly. She scanned the heights above. Wardens won't risk this path in daylight. But if shadow zealots came this far, we'll know soon enough. Jonah said nothing. He was too busy listening to the mountain. Every gust of wind through the crags sounded like whispers. Sometimes he thought he heard names. By midday they reached a plateau. The wind died, replaced by stillness so heavy it pressed against the skin. And there it was. Half buried in rock, an archway jutted from the cliff face. Its stones were blackened with age, carved with symbols Jonah recognized at once. The doubled cross, the coiled serpents, bowls encircling a spring. The survivors froze. Some gasped prayers. Others fell to their knees. Naya planted her crutch, eyes narrowing. Looks like your watcher wasn't lying. Carla moved closer, brushing her fingers across the carvings. These cuts are older than the city. Older than coal. Maybe older than memory itself. Jonah pressed his palm against the arch. The stone was cold, but beneath it pulsed the same rhythm he had felt at the ravine, the beat of hidden water. His heart raced in answer. He opened the ledger, ink bleeding into damp pages. He scrawled, "Arch found. Symbols of bowls and spring. Stone remembers deeper than city." The survivors murmured louder now, bowls clanging in awe. Some whispered Shadow's name. Others Jonah's. The divide deepened. Naya swung her crutch against the arch, the clang echoing. If this place belongs to anyone, it's ours now. Not Shadow's. Not Cole's. Ours. The sound seemed to wake the mountain. Dust rained from the arch's crown. A low groan rolled beneath their feet. Jonah staggered back. Wait, don't. But the stone split. The arch cracked down the middle, revealing a passage. Cold air swept out, damp and heavy, carrying the scent of earth and water. The survivors gasped. Children clutched their parents. The bowls they held rattled against each other, as if the sound came from deeper within the mountain. Carla's eyes went wide. The spring. Jonah's chest tightened. Safia's words returned, sharp as a blade. Seek the mountain, seek the spring. He stepped forward, the ledger trembling in his hands. The passage yawned before him, dark as prophecy, heavy as memory. And for the first time he wondered if both were the same. That night they camped at the plateau. Fires flickered low, their smoke vanishing into the starless sky. The survivors whispered in circles, torn between hope and fear. Some wanted to enter the passage at dawn. Others begged to turn back. Jonah sat apart, ledger open across his knees. The pages rippled in the night air, whispering like voices. He dipped his pen into his blood, writing. Arch opened. Passage revealed. The spring waits. But fear grows. Carla crouched beside him, eyes hollow with exhaustion. If the spring is real, maybe it's not just memory. Maybe it's power. Enough to end Cole. Enough to silence Shadow. Jonah shook his head. Or enough to bind us forever. Naya dropped beside them, her crutch clattering on the stone. She grinned despite the fatigue, her scar shining. Then we choose. Not Cole. Not Shadow. Us. Jonah stared at the dark mouth of the passage. The ledger weighed heavier in his hands as if it too strained toward the spring. And in the silence between the wind, he swore he heard it. Bowls ringing, not in defiance, not in prophecy, but as if the mountain itself remembered. He closed the book slowly, whispering, "Tomorrow we go in." The mountain swallowed them whole. The air inside was damp and heavy, tasting of rust and stone. Their torches hissed against walls slick with moisture. The survivors moved in tight clusters, bowls clutched like charms, every clang of metal echoing into the dark until it sounded like hundreds more walked beside them. Jonah led with the ledger pressed to his chest. Each step sent shivers up his spine. He felt as though the mountain were listening, recording every breath, every clang into its hidden depths. Naya's crutch struck sparks as it scraped stone. "Smells like something died in here," she muttered, her voice too loud in the silence. Carla adjusted her rig, wires trailing sparks. "Not died," she said softly. "Recorded." Jonah glanced back. "What do you mean?" Carla pointed to the wall. The torchlight revealed faint lines carved deep into the rock. Circles of bowls. Waves radiating outward. Figures kneeling. And above them all, serpents winding around a doubled cross. Jonah reached out, fingertips brushing the grooves. The stone was cold, but beneath it he felt a vibration, faint as a heartbeat. He opened the ledger, writing quickly. Walls carved. Bowls, serpents, doubled cross. Stone hums with memory. As his pen lifted, a sound rippled through the cavern. It wasn't wind. It wasn't water. It was voices. Thousands of them layered over one another, speaking names. Whispering. Shouting. Singing. Some young, some old, some cut short mid-scream. The noise poured from the walls, from the cracks in the stone, from the very ground under their feet. The survivors froze. Children covered their ears, crying. Parents clutched bowls tighter, striking them against the stone in panic. The clangs only fed the echoes, weaving new voices into the storm. Jonah staggered, palms pressed to his temples. He recognized some of the names. Names he had written in the ledger. Names he thought belonged only to him. "They're alive," he whispered. "Every name lives here." Carla crouched, her eyes wide. "Not alive. Remembered. This place, It's a ledger older than yours. The mountain keeps what's lost. Naya growled, swinging her crutch against the wall. Then tell it to shut up. The clang rang out like thunder. For a heartbeat the voices stopped. Then they returned, louder as if angered. One voice cut through the rest. Low, commanding, unmistakable. The boy bleeds. The boy writes. The boy falls. The shadow. The sound wasn't his voice as Jonah had last heard it, but a recording of something deeper, etched into the stone long before tonight. The survivors screamed. Some fell to their knees, crying that prophecy lived even in the rock. Others struck bowls, shouting that memory was theirs, not his. The cavern split into clashing noise. Jonah opened the ledger with shaking hands. His blood smeared across the page as he scrawled. Voices of the lost. Ledger of stone. Shadow's words carved before. Fear divides. His pen snapped. Ink bled into his palm. Carla grabbed his arm. Jonah, listen. If the stone remembers everything, then it remembers more than him. Find it. Write it. Jonah's breath came ragged. He pressed the ledger against the wall, closing his eyes. The voices poured into him. Chaos, sorrow, rage. But beneath them, faint and buried, another sound stirred. A bell. Not iron, not steel. A softer tone, like bowls struck in prayer. It rang once, then again, steady, pure. Jonah gasped, scribbling with what ink remained. Amid prophecy, a true note. A bell of bowls. The spring calls. As the words dried, the cavern shifted. The echoes faded. The walls vibrated with the steady tone of bowls, guiding them deeper. The survivors fell silent. Even the children stopped crying. For the first time, the mountain felt less like a tomb and more like a guide. Naya spat into the dust, though her grip on the crutch trembled. If this mountain is a book, I don't like how it's written. Carla adjusted her rig, her eyes fixed on Jonah. Then maybe we write it louder. Jonah shut the ledger, his pulse pounding in rhythm with the hidden bell. He lifted his torch, gazing into the passage ahead. And there, faint in the distance, water glimmered. The spring waited. The tunnel ended in silence. After hours of following the faint glimmer of water, the survivors emerged into a vast cavern, its roof lost in shadow. At the center lay a pool so still it looked like black glass. Around its edges, bowls carved from stone lined the ground in a perfect circle. Some were cracked, others whole, all glistening with a faint film of condensation as if they breathed. Above the pool on the cavern wall, symbols burned faintly in the torchlight. A doubled cross, serpents entwined, and 3 interlocked keys. The spring, Carla whispered, her voice trembling. The survivors crowded the edges, clutching their bowls. Children leaned forward, eyes wide. Parents pulled them back, whispering prayers. The air itself hummed as though the pool had been waiting for centuries. Jonah stepped closer, the ledger tight in his grip. His root-cut palm throbbed. He could hear it now, clearer than ever, the ringing of bowls, not from any hand but from the water itself. Naya's scar caught the dim glow. She scowled, crutch braced. Looks like a grave dressed as a miracle. Carla shook her head. No, it's more than that. Look at the carvings. 3 keys. This isn't just water. It's a door. Jonah knelt at the pool's edge. His reflection stared back, eyes sunken, jaw bruised, blood crusted along his cheek. But as he leaned closer, the reflection blurred. He saw faces instead, hundreds, thousands, names he had written in the ledger, names he had forgotten, all whispering beneath the surface. He pulled back with a gasp. They're here. Every name I wrote, they live in the water. The survivors erupted in cries. Some shouted prophecy, claiming the shadow had foretold this. Others clanged bowls, insisting this was proof of memory. The pool rippled once. A single stone bowl on the edge toppled forward, landing in the water with a hollow splash. The sound echoed, deep and endless, and the carvings above shimmered faintly. Carla clutched Jonah's arm. It wants an offering. Naya growled. It wants blood. The survivors fell silent, watching. The air grew heavy, damp pressing against skin. Jonah unwrapped the ledger, staring at its soaked, scarred pages. His hand shook. If the mountain remembers, then it remembers with cost. The Watcher warned me, memory has a price. He opened to the last page, dipped his finger into his wound and let blood drip onto the parchment. Then he held the book above the pool. Is this what you want? He whispered. The water stirred. Ripples spread outward, bowls rattling in their stone cradles. Whispers rose again, thousands of voices speaking his name. Carla's voice cracked. Jonah, don't. If you give it the ledger, we lose everything. Naya stepped forward, slamming her crutch into the stone. Sparks flew. And if he doesn't, we lose anyway. Coal burns the city, the shadow binds the people. Maybe this spring is the only way to fight them both. Jonah's hand trembled. The ledger felt alive, thrumming with each heartbeat. He closed his eyes. For an instant he saw Anne, her face pale, dragged away beneath the bell. He saw the archives burning, names curling into smoke. He saw the shadows grin, blood on his teeth. He dipped the ledger down. Its corner brushed the water. The pool blazed. Blue-white light shot up the walls, illuminating the cavern like dawn. Bowls rang without hands. The survivors fell to their knees, shielding their eyes. The carvings above shimmered. The 3 interlocked keys glowed bright, then fractured into 1,000 lines of light that poured into the water. Jonah cried out, yanking the ledger back. The pages smoked where they had touched the spring, edges blackened but glowing faintly. Carla grabbed the book, eyes wide. It didn't consume it, it marked it. The spring, it's inside now. Naya's grin was sharp. Good. Now we've got fire of our own. But Jonah wasn't so sure. His rook scar burned hotter than ever, and the whispers from the pool didn't fade. They grew louder, climbing into his skull until he staggered, clutching his head. This isn't memory, he rasped. This is alive. The water stilled again, black and calm as though nothing had happened. But the survivors would never forget the light, the sound, the way the mountain itself had answered. Jonah opened the ledger with shaking hands. A new line was already written there, in a script not his own. The spring has opened. The boy carries its water. His blood chilled. He hadn't written it. The survivors began to chant, some Jonah's name, some the shadows. Bowls clashed, not in unison but in chaos. The divide widened. Carla's face paled. Jonah, what if the ledger isn't just memory anymore? Jonah shut it hard, pressing it to his chest. Then we've lost the last truth we had. Behind them, deep within the tunnels, the sound of boots echoed, steel on stone. Wardens had found the mountain. The boots grew louder. Steel on stone measured, relentless. Wardens were coming, their march reverberating through the cavern like a second heartbeat. The survivors panicked, clutching bowls tighter, whispers spilling into cries. Naya planted herself between them and the pool, crutch raised like a spear. Hold the line. Let them break their teeth on stone. Carla fumbled with her transmitter, sparks leaping. If I can boost the feed, maybe the city will see this. Wardens desecrating the spring, shooting civilians. But it'll take time. Jonah's hand clenched around the ledger. Its pages still smoked faintly where they had touched the water, glowing with a strange pulse. He felt it vibrate in his chest, like a heart beating out of rhythm. He remembered the words that had written themselves. The boy carries its water. The first wardens appeared in the tunnel mouth, black visors gleaming, rifles raised, torches strapped to their shoulders. Their captain's voice boomed, cold and unyielding. By decree of stability, surrender the book. Surrender the spring. Or all will burn. The survivors wailed. Some dropped to their knees, begging mercy. Others raised bowls and clanged them defiantly, the sound ricocheting off stone until it shook the cavern itself. Jonah stepped forward, ledger clutched tight, his voice raw. This spring does not belong to coal. It belongs to memory. The captain raised his pistol. Then die with it. Gunfire erupted. The cavern exploded in chaos. Bullets ripped through stone, sparks flying. Survivors scattered behind the circle of bowls. Children screamed as their parents shielded them with dented metal, the clang of bullets on iron echoing like war drums. Naya charged into the fray, swinging her crutch. She cracked a soldier's visor, blood spraying as he toppled into the pool. The water hissed where his body fell, steam rising as if the spring rejected him. Carla crouched low, frantically twisting dials. Her transmitter screamed as she forced the signal live. Screens across the city flickered, showing not propaganda but the cavern itself. Wardens firing into unarmed families, bowls clashing in defense. Hold them, she screamed. The whole city sees you now. The wardens pressed forward, undeterred. More poured from the tunnel, rifles spitting fire. The cavern filled with smoke and ringing steel. Jonah staggered back, clutching the ledger. Blood dripped from his palm onto the glowing pages. He opened it, desperate, and scrawled. Wardens fire. Bowls fall. Memory drowns. The ink pulsed. The pool stirred. Whispers rose again, voices of the lost echoing from the water. They shouted names Jonah knew, names written in his hand, names of those who had died in the streets. Their cries filled the cavern louder than bullets. The wardens faltered. Some clutched their helmets, staggering as if the voices clawed into their skulls. Jonah's breath caught. He felt the spring calling him, urging him to use it, to let the voices pour out and drown the intruders. His rook scar burned like fire. He raised the ledger high. The water's glow spilled up his arms. The survivors stared, eyes wide with awe and fear. Carla's voice cut through the noise. Jonah. If you unleash it, it won't stop with them, it'll take us too. Naya slammed her crutch into the floor, blood streaking her cheek. Then let it. Better noise than silence. The cavern shook with conflict. Bullets, bowls, voices, fire. Jonah's chest heaved. He looked at the survivors, children clutching bowls, parents bleeding but defiant. He looked at the wardens, rifles raised again ready to slaughter. And he made his choice. He dipped the ledger fully into the spring. The water erupted in light. A shockwave blasted outward, throwing wardens against the walls, shattering rifles, cracking stone. The survivors fell to their knees, shielding their eyes as bowls rang without hands. Voices poured from the pool, thousands upon thousands, screaming, chanting, roaring. Jonah staggered, the ledger burning in his hands. His veins glowed faintly blue as though the spring flowed inside him now. The wardens reeled, some fleeing into the tunnels, others collapsing, helmets cracking under the weight of memory. Their captain dropped his pistol, clutching his ears as the voices drove him to his knees. The survivors gasped. Some cried Jonah's name. Others whispered shadows. The divide had never been sharper. Jonah scrawled one final line before the page seared shut. Spring unleashed. Noise broke steel. But memory burns within. He slammed the ledger shut, chest heaving, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The cavern still roared with voices, but now they answered to him. The cavern stank of smoke and blood. Wardens' bodies lay scattered among shattered rifles and broken bowls. Some survivors huddled near the pool, trembling, clutching children to their chests. Others stood staring at Jonah, eyes wide with something between reverence and fear. Jonah staggered, the ledger burning hot in his hands. His veins glowed faintly beneath his skin, pulsing with the same rhythm as the spring. Every breath scraped like fire in his chest. Carla approached slowly, transmitter still sparking on her shoulder. Jonah, her voice trembled. The city saw everything. The wardens firing into the crowd. The spring, the light, you. She swallowed hard. You're not just a voice anymore. You're something else. Naya strode forward, her crutch dripping blood from a cracked visor. Damn right. You turn steel into dust. They'll choke on your name before they sleep tonight. But Jonah didn't feel like a savior. His hands shook as he tried to open the ledger again. The pages writhed under his touch, glowing faint blue, resisting him. Finally, one tore free, the edges wet with water though he hadn't dipped it again. Words bled onto the page by themselves. Noise is flesh. Memory is blood. The boy carries both. Jonah dropped the page as if it burned. The writing crawled like worms across the parchment before dissolving into mist. Carla's face went pale. It's writing without you. That's not memory. That's possession. Naya snorted. Call it what you like. If it makes Cole bleed, I'll follow it. Jonah pressed his rook-scarred palm to his forehead, trying to steady his breath. If I can't control it, I'm no better than Shadow. The pool rippled as if in answer. Whispers rose again, but this time they spoke his name over and over, multiplying until the cavern shook with it. Survivors fell to their knees, some chanting with the voices, others cowering in terror. Carla grabbed his arm. Jonah, listen to me. Every screen in the city is still running this feed. They saw the wardens fall and they saw the water answer you. Some are calling it deliverance. Others, they're calling you the new prophet. Jonah's stomach dropped. Prophet. Naya grinned, scar splitting wide. Good. Let them. Better a prophet of memory than a prophet of lies. But Jonah shook his head, the glow in his veins flickering violently. No. If they worship me, they'll lose themselves again. The shadow twisted them with prophecy. Cole binds them with silence. I can't. I won't do the same. Carla's voice cracked. Then control it before it controls you. Far below in the city, the reaction was immediate. In the East Quarter, families poured into the streets, bowls ringing in defiance. Screens showed Jonah glowing with the spring's light, driving back the wardens. Some knelt in reverence. Others raised bowls as weapons, swearing they would never tithe blood again. In the South Docks, deserters roared with triumph. Noise is flesh. Memory is blood, they shouted, turning the phrase from the page into a battle cry. But in the North, under Cole's banners, the reaction was darker. Wardens shot civilians who rang bowls. Cole's voice thundered across screens, his eyes cold and unyielding. The boy is cursed. The spring is corruption. Memory has become treason. And treason will burn. Flames rose that night in the northern districts, entire blocks set alight as punishment. Families dragged into the streets, bowls crushed under boot heels. And yet the noise spread. The Shadow's voice returned too, cutting through stolen signals. His face appeared on flickering screens, jaw still bruised, rook tattoo burning. You see? Even prophecy bends to me. The ledger spoke and the boy fulfilled it. The spring is mine as much as his. He bleeds because I wrote it. Half the city shouted Jonah's name. The other half whispered the shadows. The divide deepened, sharper than ever. Back in the cavern, Jonah stared at his glowing veins, at the survivors kneeling before him. His breath came ragged, chest heaving. He forced the ledger open, scrawling with a trembling hand. City saw. Wardens broke. Shadow claims. Cole burns. Memory splits. The ink bled into the page, glowing faintly. He slammed it shut, whispering through clenched teeth, I'm losing them. All of them. Carla gripped his shoulder, sparks from her rig lighting her face. Then don't let the spring use you. Use it. Write what they need to see. Not prophecy. Not silence. Truth. Naya slammed her crutch into the ground. And if truth isn't enough? Jonah looked toward the pool. The water glimmered faintly as though waiting for him to choose. His veins pulsed harder. The rook scar flared. And for the first time, Jonah wondered if truth itself had survived the spring, or if he was carrying a weapon disguised as memory. The cavern didn't stay silent for long. The survivors were still trembling around the pool when the echoes of boots returned, more disciplined, heavier, dozens stronger than before. The first skirmish had been only a vanguard. Now the real hand of Cole was coming. Carla's transmitter shrieked with static. Multiple signals. They're flooding every entrance. We're boxed in. Naya's grip tightened on her crutch, knuckles white. Then we carve a way out. Jonah stared at the pool, his veins glowing faintly blue, the ledger warm against his chest. He felt the spring inside him whispering, urging him to unleash it again, to drown the tunnels and voices. But the memory of the warden's screams haunted him. Not just soldiers but men turned mad by noise, clawing at their own ears until silence came with blood. He clenched his teeth. If I use it again I lose myself. If I don't they all die here. The first volley of gunfire cracked into the cavern, stone shattering, survivors screaming. Bullets struck bowls, sparks raining. Children cried as their parents dragged them behind the stone circle. Jonah opened the ledger with shaking hands. The pages glowed faintly, words already forming before his pen touched them. The boy bleeds. The pool opens. The mountain drowns them. He slammed the book shut, breath ragged. No. Not like that. Carla crouched beside him, sparks dancing across her rig. Jonah, what did it say? Nothing true. His voice shook. Only what it wants. Naya roared, charging into the hail of bullets. She swung her crutch like an axe, knocking one warden into the pool. Steam hissed as his body vanished beneath the glowing surface. She turned back, eyes blazing. Jonah. If you won't use the water, then lead us out. The survivors clamored, bowls clanging in fear and fury. Some shouted Jonah's name, others cursed him for holding the book. The divide grew sharper with every bullet. Jonah's chest burned. He pressed a bloodied hand to the rook's scar, then lifted the ledger high. Noise is not prophecy, he shouted, voice cracking. Noise is not fire. Noise is us, and we live if we move now. The bowls answered. Clangs rose in rhythm, louder than gunfire, shaking the stone walls. For a moment even the wardens hesitated, their rifles trembling. Carla seized the chance, twisting her dials. Her rig blasted sparks into the cavern, flooding the screen still broadcasting with the sight of bowls clashing in defiance. Her voice broke through the static. Noise moves. Noise survives. Jonah pointed toward a side tunnel. That way. Move. The survivors surged, dragging wounded, clanging bowls against walls to mask their flight. Naya limped at the rear, crutch-smashing helmets, buying every step. Carla staggered beside Jonah, transmitter hissing, sparks lighting the path like false torches. The wardens followed, rifles barking, bullets whining off stone. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them into single file. The clang of bowls grew frantic, echoing into a storm of sound that rattled the very ceiling. Jonah's veins blazed brighter, the ledger pulsing in rhythm. The mountain seemed to breathe with him. Cracks split the ceiling. Dust rained. Faster, he gasped. Before it comes down. The survivors burst into a wider passage just as the roof behind them collapsed, burying wardens in an avalanche of stone and dust. Their screams vanished beneath the roar. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged breaths of the living. Jonah staggered, falling to his knees. The ledger smoked faintly, hot against his palms. He scrawled with shaking hands. Second wave broke. Mountain fell. Survivors fled. Noise carried us. The survivors stared at him, bowls still trembling in their hands. Some knelt in awe, others turned away in fear. Jonah felt both gazes burn into his skin. Naya limped to his side, blood streaking her scar. She planted her crutch, grinning despite the exhaustion. You led them, Jonah. Prophet or not, you led them. Carla shook her head, eyes haunted. Not led. Survived. But for how long before the spring decides for us? Jonah closed the ledger, pressing it to his chest. His veins still glowed faintly blue, his pulse racing with the rhythm of unseen bowls. Somewhere in the dark ahead, a faint breeze carried the scent of smoke and ash. The mountain wasn't finished with them yet. He rose slowly, voice hoarse. We keep moving. If the spring wants to own us, then we'll make it pay for every step. The survivors lifted their bowls. The clang that followed was weary, fractured, but alive. And with that noise they left the spring behind. The mountain night was sharp and merciless. Cold winds howled through the ridges, carrying the stench of smoke from the ruined tunnels below. Survivors huddled in circles on the plateau, their fires small and uncertain, bowls clutched tight like charms against the dark. Jonah sat apart, ledger across his knees, his veins still glowing faintly beneath the skin. Every time he blinked, he saw the pool, voices rising, light burning, names bleeding onto the page without his hand. He traced the rook scar in his palm and whispered to himself, not prophecy. Not prophecy. But the word clung to him like smoke. Naya stomped toward the fires, her crutch striking sparks from stone. Rest. And shut your mouths before the cold takes you faster than Cole's rifles. Her scar gleamed in the firelight, her voice sharp enough to silence even the loudest complaints. Carla moved quieter, crouched over her transmitter. Sparks flickered, faint and thin. She shook her head. Signal's too weak up here. The city can't see us anymore. She looked at Jonah, eyes weary. Maybe that's a blessing. Jonah didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the survivors, on how they split themselves even around the firelight. On one side, bowls clanged softly in rhythm, voices whispering his name as though in prayer. On the other, families sat stiff, muttering that he had brought the spring's curse with him. The divide cut deeper with every breath. By midnight the tension cracked. A man rose from the group nearest the fire. His clothes were torn, face hollow, but his voice carried strong. He lifted a cracked bowl high. We saw him drown the wardens with the spring. We saw the water answer him. He is chosen. He is prophecy made flesh. Half the crowd clanged their bowls in answer, a wave of metallic thunder. Another voice cut across, harsh and bitter. An older woman, hair white with ash, eyes hard as stone. She spat into the fire. Chosen? He carries a curse. The shadow said the boy would bleed, and so he did. The spring owns him. Follow him and you follow chains. Her followers struck their bowls too, but in discord, sharp, offbeat, jagged. The plateau rang with broken noise, clashing and colliding. Jonah's chest tightened. He rose slowly, stepping into the center. The ledger glowed faintly in his hands, its warmth crawling up his arms. The crowd hushed, eyes locking onto him, some with devotion, others with fear. He lifted the book high. I am not your prophet. This is not prophecy. The ledger is memory, your names, your dead, your lives carved into pages so they are not lost. His voice broke, but he pressed on. If the spring answered, it is because memory itself refuses silence. That is not prophecy, it is you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, bowls clanging in uncertain agreement. Others shook their heads, whispering the shadow's name. The white-haired woman shouted, If it is memory, then let the book remember us all. Open it. Show us our names. The crowd roared. Bowls struck, louder and faster, voices demanding. Open it. Open it. Jonah's grip tightened. The ledger pulsed, glowing as though it wanted to obey them. His rook scar burned, forcing his fingers open. Pages fluttered in the cold wind. Carla pushed forward, sparks from her rig lighting her face. Stop. If you let them see, you give the book what it wants. You think it remembers, but it's feeding on you. Naya slammed her crutch against the stone, the crack echoing. Enough. You want him to open it? Then be ready to bleed when the spring takes more than names. The crowd wavered, torn between awe and terror. Jonah's chest heaved. He felt the weight of every gaze, every clang. He could end the argument with a single gesture. Open the book, show them their names glowing in memory. They would kneel. They would follow. But he knew what that would make him. He pressed the ledger shut with both hands, veins blazing in protest. His voice rang across the plateau, hoarse but firm. You are not names in a book. You are not prophecy. You are noise, and noise belongs to you, not to me. The bowls clashed again, louder this time, not in unison but in defiance. The sound shook the air, raw and uneven but alive. The white-haired woman hissed, turning away. Her followers drifted into the dark, muttering. But the others stayed, striking bowls until the plateau trembled. Jonah collapsed to his knees, clutching the ledger against his chest. He scrawled with shaking hands. Crowd split. Some worship. Some curse. I denied both. But noise still rings. He shut the book slowly, breath ragged. Naya crouched beside him, her scarred face soft for once. You can't run from it forever. They'll make you prophet or curse whether you like it or not. Carla's voice cracked. Then he'd better choose which before the spring does it for him. Jonah stared into the fire, the glow of his veins flickering like embers. He whispered so only they could hear, then tomorrow I choose. Above them, the mountain groaned as if listening. Dawn bled red across the peaks. Smoke from the night's fires clung low, curling through the plateau where survivors gathered in a ragged circle. Their bowls lay before them on the stone, some cracked, some still shining with soot-polished edges. The clanging from the night had faded into uneasy silence, replaced by the weight of waiting. Jonah stood at the center, the ledger heavy in his hands. His veins still glowed faintly blue, the pulse of the spring running beneath his skin. He had promised them a choice and now they waited for it. Naya limped to his side, crutch planted firm. If you don't give them something, they'll split before midday. Half will follow Shadow. Half will kneel to Cole. And all of them will die. Carla adjusted her transmitter, sparks sputtering weakly. If you give them too much, Jonah, you'll be no different from the Shadow. You'll chain them with your words. Jonah's jaw tightened. He opened the ledger. The pages glimmered as though the spring itself strained to write through him. For a moment he felt his hand twitch, ready to surrender. He forced it still. He scrawled slowly, deliberately. Morning after fire. Bowls waiting. People broken. They demand oath. Then he looked up. Noise is ours, he said, voice rough from smoke. But memory is heavier than bowls. If we are to survive, we need more than noise. We need oath. The circle shifted uneasily. Whispers rustled. Some nodded, others frowned. Jonah lifted the ledger high. An oath not to me. Not to prophecy. Not to the spring. To each other. He stepped forward, kneeling before the white-haired woman who had cursed him the night before. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion sharp. Jonah placed the ledger on the ground between them and spoke loud enough for all to hear. This book does not own you. These pages do not command you. If I fall, if I burn, if I bleed, you do not kneel to me, you carry each other. Swear it now. Swear on bowls, on ash, on the names of the lost. He struck a broken shard of bowl against the ledger's cover. The clang echoed raw and final. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a child rose, a boy no older than 10, soot streaking his face. He stepped forward and struck his own bowl against the stone. Clang. One by one, others followed. Mothers, fathers, deserters, even the woman with ash-white hair. The plateau filled with the thunder of iron. Bowls clanged, not in worship, not in prophecy, but in vow. Naya grinned, slamming her crutch down. Oath made. Noise alive. Carla's eyes shimmered with something between relief and fear. You gave them unity, but Jonah, don't you see? You also gave them ritual. Jonah felt it too. As the bowls clashed, the ledger burned hotter in his hands. Its pages fluttered open on their own, words scrawling across the parchment without his pen. Oath of noise sworn. The boy binds them. The boy bleeds them. The boy leads them. He slammed it shut, heart pounding. No one else had seen the words. Only him. The people roared, bowls raised high, their oaths sealed in sound. For the first time since the bell fell, they looked not fractured but whole. Jonah forced a smile, though his chest burned. Then today we march as one. The crowd erupted, voices and bowls colliding into thunder. But Jonah's eyes stayed on the ledger, trembling in his grip. He whispered so no one else could hear. This is how prophecy begins. That night, when the fires burned low, Jonah sat apart with Naya and Carla. The oath still echoed in the air, bowls clanging faintly from scattered camps. Carla leaned close, voice hoarse. They'll follow you now. Not just because of truth, because of oath. Do you understand what that means? Jonah pressed his hand to his glowing veins. It means I'm chaining them even if I don't want to. Naya snorted, scar twisting with her grin. Chains can hold people together too. Better your chains than coals or shadows. Jonah didn't answer. He opened the ledger once more. The glow from its pages lit his face in the dark. He scrawled, hand shaking. Oath sworn. People bound. Noise united. But spring writes with me. The words bled across the page, shimmering blue. And when he looked up, he thought he saw something in the night sky, sparks drifting like ash carried upward as if the mountain itself had sworn too. The oath still rang in their ears when Cole answered. At dawn the plateau shuddered. A low hum rose in the sky, deep and mechanical, nothing like bowls or bells. The survivors looked up, shielding their eyes against the pale sun. Machines. 3 black airships drifted above the ridges, their hulls gleaming like blades. From their undercarriages hung cages of steel, filled with canisters painted in stark red. The wardens had never brought such machines into the mountains before. Carla's transmitter screeched with interference. She twisted dials, face paling. Broadcast. It's Cole. Every screen, every shard of glass flickered. His face appeared calm, eyes like stone. Smoke coiled in the background of his feed, city towers burning. You swore noise, Cole's voice boomed, carried both by the screens and the airship's loudspeakers. Noise is treason. And treason burns. He raised a hand. The canisters dropped. They burst across the lower valleys in gouts of fire and smoke. Villages at the mountain's edge erupted, flames clawing upward, blackening the sky. Screams echoed faintly, carried by the wind. The survivors on the plateau fell to their knees, bowls slipping from trembling fingers. Some wept, others clanged bowls in fury, the sound ragged, desperate. Naya slammed her crutch against stone, face twisted with rage. He's burning them alive. Families who never swore anything, ashes for an oath they never made. Carla gritted her teeth, hands shaking on her rig. He's showing the city too. Every screen, fire as punishment. He's saying the oath has a price. Jonah's veins blazed blue. The ledger pulsed in his grip. He wanted to open it, to write, to command the fire to remember and vanish. But he knew if he gave in again the spring would take more of him. He scrawled anyway, hand trembling. Ashes fell. Innocence burned. Oath punished. Fear rising. The ink bled across the page. For a moment, the fire in the valley shimmered in his vision, as though the ledger had tethered him to every flame. His chest convulsed. He slammed the book shut before the spring could answer. The survivors turned to him, eyes blazing with need. Do something, they cried. You carry the water. You carry noise. Save them. Jonah staggered back, shaking his head. I can't stop fire. I can't. You can, a deserter roared, shoving forward, eyes wild. The spring listens. The mountain moved. Drown the flames or we're ash too. The crowd surged, bowls clanging in demand. For the first time their noise wasn't unity or vow. It was desperation, clashing and chaotic. Naya shoved them back, crutch swinging. He's not your God. He's not your prophet. But the words only fueled the frenzy. Some shouted Jonah's name as savior. Others cursed him for bringing Cole's wrath. The plateau quaked with iron and fury. Carla pulled Jonah aside, sparks from her rig dancing across her hands. Her eyes burned into his. Listen to me. This ends 2 ways. Either you use the spring again or you make them fight without it. But you can't stand in between. Not anymore. Jonah's chest heaved. He looked down at the ledger, felt its heat throb against his palms. He saw Anne's face again, her mouth open in a scream he couldn't hear. He saw Shadow's grin, teeth red with prophecy. And he heard Safia's whisper, memory has a price. He raised his eyes to the survivors. Their bowls clanged in fury, in grief, in demand. And he chose. He lifted the ledger high. Noise swore an oath, he shouted, his voice cracking the air. If Cole answers with fire, then we answer with noise that breaks steel. Not prophecy. Not silence. War. The survivors roared, bowls crashing in unison. The plateau shook with thunder. For the first time their noise wasn't prayer or protest. It was declaration. Carla's transmitter caught the sound, broadcasting it back to the city. Across burning districts, families lifted bowls, clanging them against charred stone. In the south docks, deserters swore to march. In the east quarter, children struck bowls until their hands bled. Even in the north, under Cole's shadow, the sound carried. Cole's image remained on the screens unmoved. But his jaw tightened ever so slightly. Jonah scrawled into the ledger, the ink blazing blue. Oath sealed with fire. Cole answered with ashes. Noise answers with war. The words glowed, then sank into the page. The survivors lifted their bowls high, the clang echoing off the peaks like the birth of a new bell. Jonah pressed the ledger to his chest, veins burning, voice low so only he heard it. So be it. No more running. Above them, the airships drifted back toward the city, their message delivered. But the sky still glowed red with ash. And the mountain had chosen war. The mountain no longer felt like refuge. By the second night after Cole's fire, the survivors moved as one, no longer clustered in fearful camps but arrayed in rough columns down the ridges. Bowls hung from belts, strapped to backs, clutched in fists. The clang of metal no longer came in scattered bursts but in rhythm, like a heartbeat that echoed across the slopes. Jonah walked at the front, the ledger bound against his chest. His veins still glowed faintly, the spring's pulse mingling with his own. Every clang behind him seemed to answer inside his ribs. Naya marched at his right, her crutch painted with blood and ash, her grin feral despite exhaustion. Look at them, boy. You gave them an army. They'd bleed the sky dry for you now. Jonah shook his head. Not for me. For each other. For noise. But even as he spoke, he felt the ledger heat in agreement, as if the book itself hungered for their unity. Carla kept to his left, transmitter strapped across her back, sparks flickering faintly with each step. She scanned the valleys below, jaw tight. Cole knows we're moving. His fires weren't the end, they were the opening blow. He'll send wardens, maybe more airships. If we march blind, we die before we ever reach the city. Jonah opened the ledger briefly, his hand trembling. He scrawled. Noise rises. Columns move. War begins. But steel waits below. The words glowed blue, sinking into the parchment like water into soil. He shut it quickly, afraid to see what else it might write on its own. By midday, the march reached the high pass that overlooked the northern road into the city. From here, the land spread wide, burnt fields, blackened villages, and far off, the faint silhouette of towers still wreathed in smoke. The survivors halted, bowls clanging softly in anticipation. Children stared at the horizon as if seeing the city for the first time not as home, but as enemy. Then the wardens appeared. Ranks of black-armored soldiers marched across the plain below, their visors glinting in the sun. Armored wagons rolled behind them, steel mouths bristling with rifles. Overhead, a single airship shadowed the column, its engines growling like thunder. The survivors gasped. Some faltered, clutching their bowls tighter. Others clanged them louder, defiant even in fear. Naya slammed her crutch down. Good. Let them come. Better steel to break. Carla's face paled. Jonah, if we charge now, they'll cut us down. We need strategy, not noise. Jonah's chest tightened. He could feel the spring humming inside him, urging him to unleash it again, to drown the wardens in memory. His rook scar burned, tempting him to scrawl words that would shatter steel. But he remembered the oath. Not to him. To each other. He turned, raising his voice so the whole column could hear. Noise is not prophecy. Noise is not fire. Noise is us, and we march together. He raised his hand. The first clang rang out, his bowl striking against his palm. Naya followed, crutch slamming metal against stone. Carla added her transmitter's sparks, hissing in rhythm. The army answered. Thousands of bowls clanged in unison, a thunderous roar that shook the pass. The sound rolled down the slopes, across the valley, slamming into the warden's line like a storm. The soldiers faltered. Some raised rifles, but their hands trembled. The airship's engines wavered, its hull groaning under the reverberation. Jonah lifted the ledger, his veins blazing. He scrawled into the glowing page. Noise marched. Steel trembled. Sky shook. The ink seared, burning into the parchment. The clang grew louder, as if the mountain itself had joined them. Stones rattled loose, tumbling down the slopes, forcing the wardens to scatter. The survivors roared, bowls crashing higher, faster, louder. Children shouted names of the lost. Parents struck until their palms bled. The noise march had begun. The wardens rallied, rifles cracking, bullets whistling into the cliffs. A woman screamed as her bowl shattered, shards cutting her face. Another fell clutching her chest. The clang faltered for a moment, fear creeping back. Jonah felt the ledger blaze hotter, urging him to write again, to drown the valley in voices. His hand shook on the pen. He could end it in a single stroke, but at what cost? Carla grabbed his wrist. Don't. If you give the spring more, it'll take you. Lead them without it. Naya snarled, eyes on the soldiers below. Or write and let steel choke. Better to bleed yourself than watch them fall. The clang wavered. The wardens steadied their aim. Jonah made his choice. He slammed the ledger shut, raising it high. Bowls are your bullets, he shouted. Noise is your steel. March. The survivors roared, clanging louder than the rifles, louder than the engines, louder than fear. The sound rolled across the valley, shaking the airship's hull until rivets burst free. It tilted, engines screaming, smoke pouring from its side. The wardens stumbled, rifles slipping from trembling hands. The wagons shuddered, their steel mouths cracking under the storm of sound. The survivors surged forward, bowls raised, their march unstoppable. Jonah pressed the ledger to his chest heaving. His veins still glowed, but the book remained shut. For now the noise was theirs, not the spring's. And for the first time, Jonah believed they could win without losing themselves. The valley did not echo with battle, it listened. Every clang of bowls, every scream, every bullet seemed to sink into the stone itself, as though the mountain recorded it all. Jonah felt the weight of that listening press against his chest. His veins glowed faintly with each clang, the spring whispering inside him, urging him to release it again. Below, the wardens regrouped. Their lines shivered but did not break. Orders barked sharp as rifle bolts. Steel wagons groaned forward, plates unfolding like jaws. From their mouths came not bullets but sound. A deep, droning hum, pitched low, vibrating the very ribs of the survivors. The bowls faltered. Hands dropped from the rhythm as stomachs churned and heads spun. Children clutched their ears, wailing. The clang that had shaken the sky cracked into fragments. Carla gasped, her rig shrieking in static. They've built machines to drown noise. They're turning sound against us. Naya staggered, blood trickling from her ear. Then we break the bastards before they break us. Jonah forced his eyes open against the hum. It crawled into his skull, into the scar in his palm, into the spring itself. For a moment, he saw visions not his own, flashes of the bell shattering, of Shadow's grin, of Cole standing calm amid burning towers. And behind them all, the mountain, its voice not heard but felt. He nearly collapsed under the weight of it. But the survivors' eyes found him, pleading, desperate, demanding. Their bowls hung silent, waiting for his lead. He raised the ledger. The hum vibrated against its cover, rattling the pages as though trying to pry them open. His hand trembled, pen slick with sweat. Carla grabbed him, sparks from her rig dancing across her arms. Jonah, if you write now, it won't be you, it'll be the spring. You'll lose yourself. Naya slammed her crutch down, snarling through bloodied teeth. And if he doesn't, we all die here. Better a cursed prophet than a corpse. The ledger pulsed. The hum deepened. Survivors clutched their throats as if the air itself were choking them. Bowls slipped from their hands, clattering hollow against stone. Jonah's breath came ragged. Noise belongs to them, not to me, he whispered. But if they fall silent now, Cole wins forever. He scrawled, his hand no longer his own. Noise breaks silence. Bowls ring even in death. The ink flared blue. The survivors lurched as if struck by a current. Their bowls leapt from the ground, vibrating in midair, clanging without touch. The rhythm returned, jagged, desperate but alive. The valley shook with sound not struck by hands but summoned by memory itself. The warden's machines screamed in protest. Plates shuddered, bolts snapped. The hum fractured, stuttering beneath the storm of bowls. One wagon collapsed inward, its steel mouth imploding with a groan like dying thunder. The survivors roared, clanging harder, faster, until blood ran from their palms. The sound no longer belonged to them, it consumed them, carrying them into frenzy. Jonah staggered, veins blazing like molten lines. His eyes blurred with light, his body trembling under the spring's grip. He tried to close the ledger, but his hands would not obey. The words kept writing. Noise is flesh. Noise is blood. Noise is war. Carla screamed, seizing the book. Sparks scorched her hands as she tore it shut. Jonah. Fight it. If you let it write for you, you'll vanish inside it. He gasped, clutching his head. The voices of the mountain roared inside him, not words but thunder, bowls, names, fire. For a heartbeat, he saw himself as others did, not Jonah, not boy, not leader, a vessel. The airship above groaned, its engines faltering under the storm of bowls. Rivets popped, smoke trailed, then flame. It tilted, shrieking, before slamming into the plain in a blossom of fire. The survivors howled, bowls clanging like victory. Wardens broke ranks, some fleeing, others firing blindly into the storm. The second wagon collapsed, steel crumpling like paper. The hum died. Noise filled the valley once more. Jonah dropped to his knees, chest heaving, veins flickering dimmer now. He whispered hoarsely, "Not prophecy. Not yet." Carla knelt beside him, her hands burned raw from the ledger. Tears streaked her face, but her voice was steady. "Jonah, listen to me. They won because of you. But the spring is inside you now. And every time you open that book, less of you remains." Nia limped forward, grinning wide despite blood on her cheek. "Then let him burn, Carla. If it kills Cole, I'll follow him into hell." Jonah shut his eyes. The survivors around them roared, bowls clashing in triumph. But beneath their victory he felt it, the mountain listening, writing, waiting. He forced the ledger shut, pressing it hard against his chest. "We march," he whispered. "But the next battle won't be against steel. It'll be against the spring itself." The bowls clashed again, drowning his fear in thunder. But the mountain heard. And it remembered. The plain opened before them like a scar. After days of descent, the Noise army stood at the edge of the blackened fields. Once these lands had fed the city, rows of wheat, orchards heavy with fruit, irrigation canals glimmering in the sun. Now they were ash and dust, the soil charred by Cole's fire. Bowls clanged hollow against scorched stone, their echoes strange and distorted. Jonah walked at the front, the ledger strapped across his chest, his veins still glowing faintly blue. Every clang from the army behind him throbbed inside his body like a second heartbeat. He feared the spring had tethered him, binding his flesh to their sound. Carla walked close, transmitter hissing. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the horizon. "Cole burned this land to starve us. But look." She pointed toward the distance. Small figures moved along the canal banks, bowls in hand, clanging faintly. Not all obeyed. Some still resist. The survivors murmured, bowls striking louder at the sight of others like them. Hope rippled through the columns. But Nia spat, crutch slamming into the earth. "Or their bait. Cole doesn't leave scraps unless he wants blood drawn." Jonah's grip tightened on the ledger. He wanted to believe these scattered clangers were allies. But as the columns drew closer, unease spread. Their bowls rang in rhythm, but not Jonah's rhythm. The sound was familiar. Too familiar. Carla's face drained of color. That cadence, it's his. Shadows. The figures emerged from the ash. Dozens of men and women, their eyes wild, their bowls painted with black rook symbols. They struck in perfect unison, chanting as they clanged. The ledger speaks. The boy falls. The city frees. The Noise army faltered. Some survivors clutched their bowls tighter, others lowered them, torn between awe and fear. Jonah felt the ledger heat against his chest, the scar in his palm burning. He could hear Shadow's voice in the clangs, though his lips were nowhere to be seen. It was as if the man had etched himself into the very rhythm. From the canal's far side, a torch flared. And there he was. The Shadow stepped into view, his jaw still crooked from their last clash, rook tattoo burning against the firelight. He spread his arms wide, forged ledger gleaming in his hand. "You see." His voice carried across the fields, smooth as silk. "The Noise marches, but who wrote its steps? The boy bleeds because I foretold it. The spring answered because I commanded it. Every clang is mine." The rook-painted followers raised their bowls higher, clashing them so hard sparks flew. The Noise army shivered. Some shouted Jonah's name. Others faltered, eyes drawn to Shadow's stage across the ash. Nia growled, pushing through the ranks. "Let me take his teeth again. They'll remember truth when he spits blood." Carla grabbed her arm, eyes locked on Jonah. "No. If Jonah fights him now, it becomes prophecy again. We need proof. Memory. Or the crowd will choose him." Jonah's breath came ragged. He opened the ledger, desperate, but the pages writhed. Words bled across them without his hand. The boy meets his shadow. The city decides. He slammed it shut, heart racing. "No. Not yet." The shadow's grin widened, teeth glinting red in the firelight. "You hide your pages, boy. I show mine." He lifted the forged ledger high. Its pages glowed, alive with shifting ink. "See how prophecy breathes? See how it bends even silence into song." His followers roared. Bowls clanged louder, drowning the plain in thunder. And then the strangest thing happened. From the Noise army itself, Jonah's army, voices began to answer him. A deserter raised his bowl with trembling hands, shouting, Prophecy spoke true. Another followed and another. The clang fractured, torn between Jonah and shadow, memory and prophecy. Jonah's chest burned. He staggered, veins blazing as though the spring inside him rebelled. His voice cracked the air. Noise is not his. Noise is not prophecy. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The shadow had written himself too deeply. His rhythm pulsed in the bowls, in the marrow of the people, in the soil itself. Carla's rig sparked violently. She screamed over the chaos. Jonah! You can't outshout him. You need to show them, make them remember, not believe. Jonah ripped the ledger open. The pages writhed, glowing. He scrawled with shaking hands. Shadow claims rhythm. People fracture. But memory still breathes. The ink bled across the parchment, then pulsed outward, a wave of whispers spilling through the crowd. Names, thousands of names, rushed like wind through the noise army. Mothers heard children's names. Sons heard fathers. Lovers heard the dead called back in voices of ink. The clang faltered. Shadow's rhythm cracked. His followers shouted louder, desperate, but the weight of memory pressed heavier than prophecy. The shadow's grin broke, fury twisting his face. You think you can drown me in names? Names fade. Prophecy remains. He raised his forged ledger high. Fire flared behind him, torches blazing brighter, black smoke curling skyward. His rook-painted followers fell to their knees, chanting louder. The noise army trembled, divided. Some clanged bowls in memory, others in prophecy. The sound was no longer unity but war. Jonah's veins blazed like molten rivers. His chest heaved as he clutched the ledger tighter. For a moment he felt himself dissolve, his voice lost amid thousands. But then a child's clang rose above them all, sharp, off-rhythm, broken. It rang raw and alone. Others answered, not in unison, not in prophecy, but scattered, fractured, true. A storm of imperfect noise, bowls clashing offbeat, discordant and alive. Jonah staggered upright, raising the ledger high. Noise is not rhythm. Noise is not prophecy. Noise is chaos, and chaos remembers. The plane thundered with shattered sound. The rook-painted rhythm shattered completely, drowned in imperfect clamor. The shadow snarled, eyes burning. This isn't over. The city still chooses. And it will choose me. He vanished into the smoke, his followers scattering. The noise army roared, bowls clashing ragged but defiant. Jonah scrawled into the ledger, ink and blood mingling. Shadow rose. Prophecy fractured. But chaos remembered. He shut the book, chest heaving. The march had not ended. It had only grown stranger, more dangerous. The city rose from the plain like a scar carved into the horizon. From a distance, the towers shimmered in morning haze, blackened by smoke yet unbroken. Walls of steel and stone stretched high, lined with banners that glowed faintly in the pale light. At their center loomed a citadel unlike anything Jonah had seen before, an obsidian monolith, windowless, its surface polished smooth. The survivors gasped when they saw it. Bowls clanged instinctively, a reflex against fear. But the sound struck the air strangely. The clangs dulled, swallowed, smothered. Naya snarled, slamming her crutch against stone. Clang. The noise carried only a few steps before dissolving. Her grin faltered. The air eats it. Carla adjusted her transmitter, sparks weak against the static. Not the air. The walls. They're lined with something, baffles, dampeners, maybe tech we've never seen. Coles built the city itself into a weapon. Jonah's veins glowed faintly. He felt the silence press into him like a weight, heavy and suffocating. His chest ached, his scar burned. Even the ledger felt muted, its pulse faint as though smothered by unseen hands. He scrawled, words faint on the page. Noise falters. Silence rises. Citadel swallows all. The ink bled sluggishly as if reluctant to be written. The army behind him shifted uneasily. Thousands of bowls clattered, but no rhythm carried. The clangs fell flat, robbed of echo. Murmurs replaced thunder. A deserter spat into the dust. If noise dies here, then so do we. Another raised his bowl high, striking it again and again, desperation cracking his voice. Noise is ours. Noise is ours. But the sound faded almost before it left his lips. Fear spread faster than fire. Carla's face hardened. She grabbed Jonah's sleeve. If they lose belief now, Shadow wins without lifting a hand, and Cole burns us before we ever breach the gate. Jonah stared at the obsidian citadel. Its surface reflected faint images. His own face fractured, multiplied, 1,000 versions of himself staring back, silent. Nia spat. Then we break the walls. Noise is steel, isn't it? Let's see if bowls can crack stone. She lifted her crutch, striking her bowl hard enough to dent it. Sparks leapt, but the sound withered. The army clanged with her, thousands of bowls striking at once. For a heartbeat it sounded like thunder. But then silence devoured it, leaving only the echo of breath and the low hum of the city's machines. The survivors stared, horror dawning. Their greatest weapon stripped away. Jonah's chest heaved. He opened the ledger, desperate. Pages fluttered, glowing faintly blue. Whispers rose, but not the voices of the dead. These were colder, mechanical, repeating the same words over and over. Noise fails. Silence reigns. Obey. His hand shook. He slammed the ledger shut, bow rising in his throat. He's written silence into the stone. Every clang dies here because he commands it. Carla's eyes glimmered with fear. Then you have to show them another way. If noise alone fails, what do they march with? Jonah looked at the people, at children clutching cracked bowls, at deserters with blood on their faces, at families who had followed him through fire and tunnels, only to find their sound swallowed whole. Their eyes begged him for meaning. Nia growled, her voice low. Give them oath again. Make them swear louder than silence. Carla shook her head. Not oath. Proof. If you turn this into ritual again, you'll be no better than shadow. We need memory, Jonah. Show them truth even silence can't erase. Jonah's scar burned. He lifted the ledger, his voice hoarse. Noise dies against stone. But memory lives in flesh. Every name, every wound, every step here is proof. If Cole makes silence his wall, then we carve our noise into him. He struck his bowl not for echo but for scar. The dent stayed, the mark tangible. He held it high. Noise is not only sound. It is what remains when sound is stolen. For a moment the army hesitated. Then one woman lifted her bowl, showing its cracks from the march. A man raised his edges bent from battle. Children held up bowls smeared with blood. One by one the army lifted their broken bowls high, not for clang but for scars. The citadel loomed silent, but the site itself roared. Carla's transmitter sparked alive, catching the image. Screens across the city flickered. Residents in East Quarter, South Docks, even the North saw thousands of bowls lifted, dented, broken, proof of survival. Jonah scrawled into the ledger. Noise denied. Silence built. But scars spoke louder. The words glowed faintly, sinking deeper. The army did not cheer. They stood in silence, bowls raised, eyes blazing with defiance. And for the first time, silence itself trembled. The silence deepened until it became a presence. The noise army stood on the scorched plain, bowls lifted high, their dents and cracks gleaming under a colorless sky. No clang carried. No echo returned. Only the hum of the citadel pressed down, heavy as stone. Then a figure appeared on the wall. Cole. He was framed by banners that rippled soundlessly, though the wind raked at them. His uniform was immaculate, iron gray, stitched with golden sunbursts. His face was calm, eyes hollow, his voice amplified not by sound but by the very walls, vibrating in every skull at once. You bring your scars to my gates, he said. You think broken bowls and broken flesh make you strong. But strength is silence. And silence is eternal. The army stirred uneasily. Some lowered their bowls, others clutched them tighter. Mothers shielded their children's ears though there was nothing to shield them from, only the cold certainty of his voice. Cole raised his hand. Look around you. Every clang you made on the march, every oath you swore, every scream you loosed, it dies here. The citadel is silence carved into stone. Noise cannot pass. Nia spat into the dust, her crutch thumping. Then we'll climb the walls and see how eternal your silence feels when it cracks. But even her voice came out muted, devoured before it could echo. Her defiance landed flat, stripped of thunder. Carla clutched her transmitter, sparks fizzling weak. Jonah, he's right. Even the rig can't broadcast here. If we don't act, silence becomes truth. Jonah's veins glowed faintly, the ledger hot against his chest. He felt the spring stir within him, urging him to open the book, to unleash its voices and drown Cole's wall. His scar burned like fire. He opened the ledger and words spilled before his pen touched. Noise fails. Silence rules. The boy breaks. He slammed it shut, trembling. No, not like this. Carla's eyes widened. Jonah, if you don't give them something now they'll turn. Some already whisper Shadow's name. Others, they'll kneel to Cole. Jonah looked at the army. He saw doubt flickering in their eyes. He saw Bowles lowering, knees bending. He saw silence creeping not from the walls but from within. He raised his voice, hoarse but firm. Noise dies here because he carved it into stone. But noise is not only sound. It is scars. It is names. It is memory. He lifted the ledger high. If silence swallows our clang, then we carve our noise into his silence. He struck his bowl again, clang, and though the sound died, the dent deepened. He pressed it to the dirt, leaving a mark in the ash. The army followed. Bowls slammed into earth, into stone, into their own flesh. Dents multiplied, scars deepened, marks carved. The plain became a field of proof. Cole's eyes narrowed. You believe scars will breach my walls? Full. Silence does not yield to scratches. He lifted his hand. A hum rose from the citadel, deeper, heavier. The very ground vibrated. Survivors fell to their knees, clutching their skulls. Bowls rattled from their grip, rolling across the dust. Jonah staggered, veins blazing, the ledger thrumming with pressure. The hum sank into his bones, into his breath, into the spring itself. He felt silence gnaw at his marrow. Carla screamed, sparks bursting from her rig. Jonah, if you don't open it, we all die here. Nia roared, blood dripping from her ear. Then open the cursed book and drown him before he drowns us. Jonah's hand hovered over the ledger. The spring urged him, whispering promises, unleash me and silence will shatter. But he saw the words already crawling across the cover. The boy speaks. The boy becomes noise. The boy is prophecy. He clenched his fist until blood dripped from his scar. Not prophecy. Not silence. Memory. He dropped to his knees, scrawling furiously across the dirt with his own blood. These are not prophecies. These are names. He carved them raw, and Nia, Carla, the deserters, the children, every name he could summon. Survivors saw and followed, scratching names into earth, into bowls, into skin. The plain filled with writing, 1,000 names etched in defiance. Cole's hum faltered. For the first time his calm cracked. His eyes narrowed at the field of names. Jonah lifted his bloodied hand high. Silence cannot erase what is carved. Noise is memory and memory lives. The army roared, not in sound for their clang still died, but in action. Bowls slammed, names carved, scars raised. Their noise became visible, undeniable. The citadel shuddered. Just faintly. Cole's voice cut through again, sharp, strained. You think names will save you? Then I will give you more names to carve, your own as you burn. The banners rippled. Machines stirred along the walls. Jonah pressed the ledger tight to his chest. His veins glowed brighter, his body trembling. He scrawled with shaking hands. Silence trembled. Names carved. Were not sound but mark. The ink flared. The page bled. And the citadel for the first time seemed to listen. The walls groaned. From hidden seams in the obsidian citadel, vast panels slid aside. Behind them machines awoke, colossal engines with mouths shaped like bells, their interiors glowing faintly blue. They thrummed with a low pulse, not sound but the absence of it. The air itself seemed to thicken. Survivors clutched their chests as breaths came shallow. Bowls slipped from trembling hands, clattering noiselessly into the dust. Carla's transmitter sputtered, then died. She tore it from her back, slamming it against the ground. He's built silence into flesh. It's choking them. Nia staggered, blood leaking from her nose, her crutch barely keeping her upright. What in hell? Cole's voice rolled from the walls, colder than before. You carve names into ash. I carve silence into blood. Every oath you swore will freeze in your veins. The engines pulsed again. Survivors screamed soundlessly as their lips moved, voices devoured before they could form. A child collapsed, her bowl rolling from her hands. A deserter clawed at his throat, eyes bulging, then fell still. Jonah's chest burned. His veins glowed fiercely, the spring inside him raging against the imposed silence. He opened the ledger. Its pages fluttered violently, glowing blue as if the book itself fought to breathe. Words etched themselves without his hand. Noise dies. Blood stills. The boy opens or all are ash. Jonah clenched his jaw. No. I won't let you write me. Carla seized his wrist, her face pale with terror. Jonah, if you don't act, half of them will die before sundown. Nia slammed her crutch into the earth, her voice a broken rasp. Then open the damn book. Better cursed than corpses. The engines pulsed again. More survivors dropped, bowls slipping into the dust, names unfinished in ash. The noise army, his army, was being erased without a single bullet fired. Jonah fell to his knees, clutching the ledger to his chest. He felt the spring clawing at him, desperate, urging him to surrender, to let it roar through him. His scar split open, blood streaming down his palm. He whispered, "If I open it now, I don't know what I become." And then he saw Anne. Not in flesh, she was gone, lost to Cole's prisons, but in memory. Her face flickered in his mind, her voice striking bowls beneath the bell, her defiance louder than steel. Noise belongs to the people, not prophets. Jonah rose, veins blazing like rivers of fire. He opened the ledger, but instead of letting it write, he scrawled with his own blood, carving each word into the page. Names do not freeze. Blood remembers. Silence cannot kill memory. The ledger screamed. A blast of light surged from its spine, blue and red, memory and blood fused. The engines of silence stuttered, their glow flickering. The survivors gasped, voices rushing back into their throats like air returning to lungs. 1,000 bowls clanged at once. The plane shook. The Citadel itself trembled, fissures crawling across its polished surface. For the first time, silence cracked. Cole's voice returned, sharper, furious. "You dare defile the order of flesh? You think memory can outlast silence? Then you will drown in both." The engines flared again, louder, hungrier, their hum rising to a scream that bent the very air. Survivors shrieked as bowls shattered in their hands, shards cutting into flesh. Jonah staggered, blood pouring from his palm, the ledger searing hot. His vision blurred, the spring's voices roaring inside his skull. He saw flashes, shadow grinning from smoke, Naya broken on the ground, Carla burning in sparks. Prophecies not yet written, crowding his mind. He dropped to his knees, scrawling one last desperate line. Scars spoke. Silence cracked. But cost still waits. The page burned black, sealing the words. The engines faltered but did not die. The survivors clanged bowls through bloodied hands, defiant still. The Citadel loomed above, wounded but unbroken. Jonah pressed the ledger to his chest, whispering to himself, to Anne, to the spring, to no one. This is only the beginning. And the mountain wind carried his words into silence. The fissures spread like veins of light across the Citadel's surface. From the plain below, the survivors lifted their bowls, bloodied and cracked, and roared with voices that only half carried, for silence still clung to the air. Yet their defiance had left a mark. The once perfect obsidian wall now bore scars, jagged lines that pulsed faintly as though the Citadel itself bled. Jonah stood at the front, the ledger pressed tight to his chest. His veins glowed more fiercely than the cracks above, but his body felt hollow, as if each name he carved had stolen something from him. The spring still whispered inside him, urging him forward, promising that the wall would fall if he simply surrendered his hand again. But he would not. Not yet. Carla crouched near the front ranks, transmitter sparking faintly, her face lit by exhaustion and grim awe. "You heard it, Jonah. You actually hurt the Citadel." She tapped her rig, static hissing. But the signal still choked. "Until we're inside, the city won't see any of this." Naya dragged her crutch across the dust, eyes on the cracks above. Her grin was feral. "Then we don't stop at scars. We drive the wound open. And if Cole's soldiers are waiting, we bleed them before they bleed us." The survivors roared at her words, bowls clashing together like weapons. The sound still dulled against the walls, but their intent carried, fury beating louder than silence. By dusk, the fissures widened. Segments of the wall crumbled outward, heavy slabs crashing into the plain, throwing up clouds of ash. Survivors cheered, but their joy faltered as the dust cleared. The gap revealed not an open path, but a passage of iron teeth, massive portcullises layered 3 deep, their spikes stained black. Behind them, the glow of lanterns flickered. Movement stirred, shadows shifting, rifles glinting. Wardens. Hundreds of them, arrayed in silent ranks. Jonah's chest tightened. Cole had expected the breach. Carla's voice cracked with urgency. "If we charge, they'll mow us down. We need chaos, noise they can't predict." Naya slammed her crutch into the ground, snarling. "Then we give them chaos. We've got thousands of bowls and nothing left to lose." Jonah lifted the ledger. His hands trembled. He wanted to write. No, he needed to. The spring clawed at him, whispering visions of fire erupting through the cracks, of wardens drowned in memory. But he remembered the engines, the way silence had nearly frozen his people's blood. He couldn't let the spring command him again. He opened the book slowly, forcing his own hand to scrawl. Citadel cracked. Steel waits within. Wardens guard silence with blood. The ink glowed faint, almost reluctant. But it held. Jonah closed the ledger, lifting his gaze to the army. We don't give him silence. We don't give him prophecy. We give him noise, broken, wild, unchained. The survivors lifted their bowls. This time they did not strike in rhythm. They shattered them against stone, bent them against armor, clanged them offbeat, raw. The sound rolled in jagged waves, discordant and alive. The wardens flinched. Their rifles wavered. For the first time, silence did not swallow noise, it recoiled from it. Then, amid the chaos, another voice cut through. Smooth. Familiar. The ledger spoke of cracks in the wall. And here they are. The shadow's face flickered on a lantern screen beyond the gates, rook tattoo burning on his wrist. His grin was crooked, teeth still broken from their last clash. He raised his forged ledger, its pages glowing in unnatural fire. The city opens not for the boy but for prophecy. The breach is mine. The wardens did not fire. Instead they parted, lowering their rifles. The gates groaned, iron teeth rising slowly. And behind them, more figures emerged, civilians, bowls painted with rooks, chanting his name. Carla's face went pale. He's already inside. He's turned them. Half the city belongs to him now. Naya's grip tightened on her crutch. Then we tear him out root and bone. Jonah's chest burned. He opened the ledger, desperate, but the pages writhed. Words scrawled without his hand. The boy breaches. The boy bleeds. The shadow waits. He slammed it shut, blood dripping from his palm. His eyes locked on the shadow's grin, framed by the rising gates. This isn't prophecy, Jonah whispered, more to himself than to anyone. It's a trap. The survivors pressed behind him, bowls lifted, eyes blazing with faith or fury. They didn't care if it was a trap. They wanted through. Jonah raised the ledger high. His veins glowed like molten rivers. Then we breach. But on our noise, not his. The army roared. Bowls shattered. The plain thundered. And the gates of silence opened to swallow them whole. The gates screamed open. Iron teeth lifted slowly, the grinding echo swallowed into the citadel's walls. Beyond, torchlight revealed a corridor wide enough to march an army through. Wardens stood in precise rows, rifles lowered but ready, their visors reflecting the chaos outside. And behind them, civilians crowded, bowls painted with rook symbols, chanting in perfect rhythm. The ledger speaks. The ledger speaks. The noise army surged forward, bowls raised high. The clang they made was jagged, discordant, already clashing against the rook rhythm echoing from within. The collision of noise filled the corridor, sound battling sound, memory against prophecy. Jonah forced himself to the front, Naya limping beside him, Carla dragging her sparking rig. The air reeked of oil and smoke, the walls slick with condensation. Silence still clung to the stone, muting the clang, but cracks ran deeper now, thin lines of faint blue pulsing in time with his veins. The first wardens raised their rifles. Their captain barked, by decree of stability. But he never finished. The shadow's voice cut in from high above, projected across the corridor from glowing screens mounted into the walls. His face loomed large, fractured by the fissures of broken glass. His grin was wide, his crooked teeth red with firelight. Hold your fire, he purred. Let the boy through. His prophecy is not yet fulfilled. The wardens froze. Their rifles lowered, some reluctantly, some with eerie obedience. Jonah's chest tightened. Even Cole's men were listening to the shadow now. The rook-painted civilians pushed forward, bowls raised, chanting louder. They surrounded Jonah's vanguard, reaching to touch him, their eyes shining with fanatic light. Noise is prophecy, one woman whispered, clutching his sleeve. Your blood is proof. Jonah pulled back, veins burning. He wanted to shout, to tell them noise was memory, not destiny. But the words stuck. Their hands clung to him like chains. Naya swung her crutch, knocking them back with a snarl. Get your claws off him. He's not your prophet. The clangs fractured further. Half the corridor shouted Jonah's name, half cried shadows. The walls swallowed the noise unevenly, twisting echoes into strange patterns. It felt as though the citadel itself were listening, choosing. Carla slammed her rig against the wall, sparks leaping. Jonah. Look. Through the smoke, she pointed down the corridor. The path split in two. To the left, a stairwell climbed toward the citadel's heart, where Cole's banners still glowed faintly gold. To the right, a tunnel spiraled downward, rook symbols scrawled across its stone. 2 paths. 2 powers. Jonah's scar burned. He opened the ledger, and before he could move his hand, the page scrawled itself. Left, silence eternal. Right, prophecy fulfilled. The boy breaks either way. His breath caught. He slammed the book shut. The shadow's face leaned close across the screens as if he could see Jonah hesitate. Choose, boy. Silence or prophecy. Either way, the city is mine. The army behind Jonah roared in confusion. Some surged toward the left, shouting for Cole's blood. Others veered right, chasing the rhythm of the rook. Bowls clashed, fists flew, unity shattered. Jonah's knees buckled. He pressed the ledger to his chest, whispering, "No, not prophecy. Not silence. There has to be another way." Naya gripped his arm, fierce even through blood and exhaustion. "Then carve it. Make a third path. Or we die chained to one of them." Carla's voice cracked, hoarse but resolute. "Jonah, you've made scars speak before. Do it again. Carve through the wall itself." The walls around them pulsed faintly blue, veins of the spring running through stone. The citadel was not unbreakable, it bled where noise struck. Jonah staggered forward, raising his bowl high. His voice carried raw, broken, imperfect. "We don't march left. We don't march right. We carve forward." He slammed the bowl against the wall. Clang. The sound dulled but the crack deepened. Blue light flared from the fissure. The army followed. Thousands of bowls struck stone, off rhythm, wild. The citadel groaned, fissures spreading, dust raining from the ceiling. The shadow's face contorted in fury on the screens. "You think you can write new prophecy? Full. Even your defiance fulfills mine." Cole's voice boomed suddenly, cold and measured, cutting across the corridor like a blade. "Noise is nothing but the path to silence. Let them carve, stone will bury them." The walls shook violently. Chunks of obsidian fell, crushing soldiers and civilians alike. Screams rang hollow, swallowed almost instantly. But the crack widened. Light spilled through, not fire, not gold, not rook symbols. A pale, bluish glow, like the veins of the mountain itself running beneath the citadel. Jonah pressed the ledger against the fissure. His scar split wider, blood soaking into the stone. He scrawled with his own hand, his own blood. Not silence. Not prophecy. Another path. The wall roared. Stone exploded outward in shards. A third passage yawned open, narrow and unlit, leading into the unknown heart of the citadel. The army froze, torn between fear and awe. Jonah turned to them, his eyes blazing blue, his voice ragged but unyielding. "Follow me." Into the wound. And the noise army, fractured but still alive, stepped into the path no book had written before. The wound gaped before them, a narrow passage of raw stone and pulsing light. The citadel had not been hollowed by human hands. Its walls were veined with the same bluish glow that ran through Jonah's scar, as though the mountain itself had been bled and bound into silence. The air was damp, metallic, humming with a low resonance that made every bowl in the noise army shiver faintly. Jonah stepped first, the ledger pressed to his chest. The glow answered each of his breaths, flaring brighter with his pulse. His veins blazed in harmony with the walls and he felt it, the citadel listening, the citadel remembering. But not like memory should. It twisted what it held. Behind him, Carla whispered, her voice hushed as though the air itself forbade volume. "It's not a fortress. It's a lung. It's breathing us in." Naya spat, crutch dragging sparks on the stone. "Then we choke it before it chokes us." The survivors followed hesitantly, their bowls clutched tight. Every clang they dared to make came out thin, warped, swallowed almost before it left the metal. Yet faint echoes returned, not of their strikes but of others. Whispers of bowls struck years ago. Voices of the dead. Screams that had already faded in the city above. The citadel was feeding them ghosts. Jonah faltered. He pressed his hand against the wall. The stone was warm, too warm. Beneath it, he felt the faint throb of countless names, written, erased, consumed. The citadel was a book but not like his ledger. It did not remember to preserve. It remembered to devour. Carla's eyes widened as her transmitter flickered. "Jonah, it's storing them. Every name, every clang, every oath, it's all trapped here. This place is the silence. Not just walls, memory buried alive." The noise army stirred uneasily. A deserter raised his bowl, voice shaking. "If it holds our names, then we're already dead." Fear spread like a stain. Bowls lowered, footsteps faltered. Some muttered Shadow's name, others whispered Cole's, both seeking escape from the wound. Jonah's scar split wider. He opened the ledger, scrawling with blood-stained fingers. "Citadel eats names." Memory twisted. Noise buried. The page flared, and for a heartbeat, the whispers fell silent. The survivors looked up, hope flickering. Then the citadel answered. The walls bulged, stone shifting like muscle. Faces emerged, pressed from the inside out, mouths open in voiceless screams. Hands clawed the surface, reaching. Their features were twisted but recognizable, people the survivors had lost. Mothers, brothers, friends. One child screamed, dropping his bowl. Mama? Jonah staggered back while burning his throat. He understood now. The Citadel was not silence. It was a vault of stolen memory, feeding on the dead, reshaping them into chains. Naya swung her crutch at a wall, striking a half-formed face. Stone shattered, blue light spilling, the visage collapsing back into formless rock. She snarled, "They're not your dead. They're his puppets." Carla's rig sparked violently, overloading. Jonah. If we don't find the core, it will use their faces until we kneel. We need to cut out its heart. The wound widened, leading deeper. Faint chanting drifted from below, not the wardens, not Cole, but softer, almost reverent. The rook symbol glowed faintly along the floor, painted in ash. Shadow had been here first. Jonah's veins throbbed, his scar pulsed like fire. He pressed the ledger shut and whispered, "We're walking into his stage." The survivors hesitated, torn between fear of silence and faith in noise. But Jonah raised his hand, blood dripping down his wrist, voice steady despite the tremor in his bones. Noise is not prophecy. Noise is not silence. Noise is ours. If the Citadel eats names, then we carve louder, deeper, until it chokes. He lifted his bowl and struck it against the wall. The sound was thin, warped, but the scar it left burned bright. The noise army followed. Thousands of bowls struck. The Citadel groaned, its stolen faces shrieking before dissolving back into stone. The wound deepened, guiding them inward toward the Citadel's core. And waiting there, Jonah knew, would not only be Cole. The shadow's rhythm already pulsed faintly in the stone, as if the Citadel had begun to sing his prophecy. Jonah clutched the ledger tighter, whispering a final line for himself alone. If silence eats memory, then shadow feeds it. One must die before the other. The wound yawned wider, swallowing them whole. The wound led downward in a spiral, a tunnel carved not by chisels but by pressure, as if the mountain itself had been forced to swallow its own stone. The deeper they went, the stranger the air became. Every breath felt thinner, as though sound itself had been drained from the lungs. Even Naya's crutch, once thunder against rock, now struck with a dull, muffled thud. Carla's rig sparked only faintly, the static stretched and warped into silence before it could hiss. The survivors whispered, bowls clutched tightly, but their voices came out hollow, like echoes stolen before they began. And then the tunnel opened. They emerged into a cavern vast enough to swallow the parish, the docks, perhaps the bell itself if it still stood. The ceiling arched high, carved smooth, gleaming black with the same obsidian polish as the Citadel's walls. Blue veins pulsed faintly across it, casting ghost light on the floor. At the cavern's center stood a throne. It was enormous, carved from the mountain itself, yet strangely incomplete. Its seat was empty. Its back fractured, jagged as if half-formed. And around it, concentric rings of stone benches spread outward, enough to seat thousands. But no one sat there. Not Cole. Not Shadow. Only silence. The noise army halted, bowls raised in awe and dread. Even their clanging faltered, the sound snuffed out before it reached the throne. Carla's voice shook. This is how he rules. Not by being present, but by not needing to be. She pointed at the veins in the stone. The Citadel amplifies his silence. This throne is empty because his absence is power. Jonah's scar throbbed painfully. He stepped forward, the ledger glowing faintly. Every instinct screamed that he should not approach, yet his feet moved anyway. Each step echoed inside his skull, though no sound reached his ears. When he reached the base of the throne, he opened the ledger. The pages fluttered violently, their ink bleeding into shapes that were not his. The hollow throne. The empty seat. The silence that commands. Jonah's hand trembled. He scrawled over the words, desperate to overwrite them. Noise belongs to the people. Throne cannot stay empty. But the ink blurred, fading into the page as though swallowed whole. He stumbled back, clutching the book to his chest. His voice came raw, barely audible even to himself. It eats even the truth. Naya slammed her crutch into the stone, teeth bared. Then we fill it. Sit the boy down. Let his noise become throne. The army murmured, voices fractured, uncertain. Some nodded, bowls raised. Others shook their heads, whispering of prophecy, of shadow, of betrayal. Carla's face twisted with fear. No. Don't you see? If Jonah sits there, he becomes Cole. The throne doesn't bend, it consumes. Anyone who claims it vanishes into silence. Jonah pressed his scarred hand to the stone seat. The cold sank into his bones, searing hollow. For a moment he saw visions. Cole sitting here once, his face impassive, his silence spreading outward like fire. Behind him, wardens bowed without command, civilians obeyed without question. Then the vision twisted. He saw himself on the throne, his veins blazing, the ledger pulsing on his lap. The army bowed, bowls lifted. But their clangs were gone. Their voices were gone. Only silence remained, commanded by him. He tore his hand back, gasping. "This throne doesn't rule the city," he whispered. "It erases it." The survivors stirred nervously, their bowls clashing faintly. Fear rippled through them. And then, a laugh. It came not from the throne, nor from the walls, but from everywhere at once. Smooth. Familiar. The shadow. Screens hidden high in the cavern walls flickered, his face burning into the hollow. He leaned close, his rook tattoo glowing, his grin crooked and hungry. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he purred. "Cole built his throne from absence. And now you tremble before it like children." But the ledger spoke of this moment. The boy before the hollow seat. The choice between silence and prophecy. His grin widened, teeth catching the blue glow. If he does not sit, silence wins. If he does, prophecy fulfills. Either way, the city is mine. The rook-painted civilians among the noise army fell to their knees, bowls lifted, chanting his name. Others cried for Jonah, begging him to claim the throne and end Cole's silence. The army fractured again, torn in two. Carla grabbed Jonah's arm, her voice ragged. "Don't. Whatever you do, don't sit. Find another way. Make the wall bleed again." Naya snarled, pointing her crutch at the shadow's flickering face. "Or sit and then break the throne from within. Better to burn in power than to kneel outside it." Jonah's scar split wider. The ledger seared against his chest, desperate to open. He whispered, half to himself, half to the spring. Not silence. Not prophecy. A third path. He raised his bowl. His voice, faint but defiant, carried into the hollow. "If the throne is hollow, then so is your rule. We carve a seat of scars, not silence." The army roared or tried to. Their voices faltered, devoured. Yet their bowls struck, ragged, defiant, leaving dents in the stone floor around the throne. The hollow throne trembled. Fissures spread across its base, blue light bleeding outward. The shadow's grin faltered. And in that moment Jonah knew, this throne could crack. But cracking it would mean breaking not just Cole's silence, but the city itself. The throne trembled. Blue fissures crawled up its base, pulsing in time with the dents carved by thousands of bowls. The cavern rumbled as if the citadel itself recoiled. The noise army pressed forward, bowls clashing raggedly, their sound thin but defiant. Then the light shifted. The blue veins dimmed, replaced by a cold golden glow that seeped from the cracks. The trembling stopped. The throne stilled. And Cole appeared. He did not walk into the cavern. He unfolded from the throne itself, as if silence had given him shape. His iron-gray uniform gleamed in the golden light, sunburst stitched into his chest. His face was carved from stone, calm, unblinking, ageless. His eyes swept the cavern without hurry, settling at last on Jonah. The noise army faltered. Some dropped their bowls, others clutched them tighter. No one cheered. No one dared. Cole raised one hand. He did not shout. He did not need to. His voice rolled out of the throne, vibrating in bone rather than air. "You strike scars into my walls, boy. You think dents make power. But power is not noise. Power is silence that cannot be broken." The bowls in the army quivered. Several cracked outright, split clean down the middle. Survivors gasped as the sound died in their hands. Jonah stepped forward, ledger clutched tight, veins glowing faintly blue. His throat ached to answer, but his first words emerged muted, strangled. He forced them louder. "Silence doesn't preserve. It erases. Every name you've stolen, every bowl you've broken, none of them serve truth. Only your fear of it." Cole descended the steps of the throne. Each step made the cavern dimmer, swallowing more of the noise army's faint echoes. Truth? His lip curled faintly. Truth is chaos. Truth is weakness. That is why the Citadel exists. To contain truth. To bury memory before it poisons order. The survivors muttered, bowls shaking. Some shouted Jonah's name. Others bowed their heads. The army was breaking, torn between the living presence of Cole and the fractured voice of Jonah. Carla fought her rig, sparks biting her arms as she screamed, Jonah, if you don't show them something now, they'll kneel. You need to make the throne bleed. Jonah opened the ledger. The pages writhed violently, ink spilling into words he did not write. The boy kneels. The boy silenced. The throne remains. He slammed it shut, chest heaving. No, not like this. Cole stepped closer. His calm never wavered. You are not my enemy, Jonah Mercer. You are my reflection. You write names to preserve. I erase them. Two sides of the same ledger. But only one can rule. Jonah's scar split wider, blood dripping down his wrist. He raised his bowl high, dented and cracked. I don't rule. I remember. He struck the bowl against the throne. Clang. The sound was faint, swallowed. But a small fissure split across the throne's armrest. Blue light bled out. For the first time, Cole's calm cracked. His jaw tightened. His voice sharpened, not louder but heavier. You will not scar silence. He raised his hand. The Citadel responded. From the walls, spectral arms surged forth, stone and shadow shaped like the faces Jonah had seen earlier, their mouths open in voiceless screams. They clawed at the noise army, dragging civilians into the stone itself. People vanished mid-scream, their bowls clattering uselessly to the floor. Panic erupted. Bowls clashed wildly, discordant, frantic. The cavern filled with chaos. Naya roared, swinging her crutch through one of the arms. The stone shattered, fragments glowing as they fell. Jonah. Stop talking and make him bleed. Jonah opened the ledger again, forcing his hand to write despite the pages resisting. Throne cracked. Silence clawed. Memory fights. The ink flared blue. The fissure widened. The throne shook again. Cole's eyes narrowed. Every scar you make costs you more of yourself. You think you can outlast me? You will burn before silence does. Jonah staggered, veins blazing. His vision blurred. He saw Anne's face again, her voice echoing faintly. Noise belongs to the people, not prophets. He lifted the ledger high, his voice breaking but unyielding. If silence is your throne, then scars are mine. The noise army roared, bowls clashing, this time not in rhythm but in chaos. The throne groaned, cracks spreading up its back, golden light battling blue. Cole stepped closer, his calm fractured, his silence bleeding anger for the first time. His voice cut sharp. Then you are not memory. You are noise alone. And noise dies. The cavern shuddered. The battle of throne and scars had begun. The cavern thundered. Every clang of bowls echoed against the throne, every scar deepened the cracks. Blue light spilled upward in jagged veins, fighting the golden glow that bled from Cole's presence. The two forces warred not in sound but in the marrow of the stone itself. Cole raised both arms. The Citadel obeyed. From the walls surged an army of silent figures, sculpted from stone and shadow, their faces blank, their hands clawing. They swarmed the noise army, dragging survivors into the walls where they vanished without a scream. Naya swung her crutch like a blade, smashing one to shards, her breath ragged. They don't stop coming. Carla slammed her transmitter against the floor, sparks bursting as she forced it alive. Screens flickered to life around the cavern, showing the chaos. Bowls raised, arms dragging, fissures spreading. Her voice cracked with fury. The city has to see this. They have to see silence bleeding. Jonah staggered forward, veins blazing, the ledger burning in his hands. He struck his bowl against the throne again. Clang. Another fissure split the seat. Cole snarled. His calm was breaking, his silence fraying. You don't understand, boy. You think this throne is mine. You think I built silence. But I only found it. Jonah froze, his blood dripping onto the ledger. Found it? Cole's eyes burned with a strange reverence. This citadel was here before me. Before the city. Before noise. It was carved by hands that feared memory itself. I merely claimed what they left behind. The survivors gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire, bowls trembling in their hands. Jonah's scar seared with agony. The ledger writhed open, its pages filling with words he had not written. The throne older than the bell. Silence older than the city. Built by the watchers. His vision blurred with images. Ancient figures cloaked in ash, chiseling the mountain, binding names into stone. A spring running not with water, but with memory itself, siphoned into the throne. Jonah staggered back, horror tightening his throat. The watchers, they built this. Carla's face drained of color. Then Cole's not the author. He's just the reader. Cole stepped down from the throne, golden light bleeding from his every step. His voice hardened. And what I read I keep. You think scars will break the citadel? They only feed it. Every dent, every wound, every drop of blood, it remembers, but not for you. For me. The fissures glowed brighter, as if proving his point. The throne drank the scars, swallowing them like fuel. The citadel hummed, hungrier than before. Nia roared, slamming her crutch into the floor. Then we break the whole cursed thing, tear it down until nothing remembers. Jonah's chest heaved. He opened the ledger again, scrawling with his own blood. Silence older. Throne built by watchers. Scars feed it. The ink flared, resisting, trying to twist into prophecy. Jonah pressed harder, his hand trembling. No. Not prophecy. Not yours. The page burned hot, searing his palm. The voices of the spring roared inside him, not whispers now but screams. He saw, and again her hands striking bowls. He saw nameless faces swallowed by the citadel. He saw shadows grin, waiting in the dark below. Cole advanced, his voice deep as stone. Choose, Jonah Mercer. Kneel and you inherit silence. Resist and you feed it until nothing remains. Jonah lifted his head, eyes blazing blue. His voice was hoarse but unyielding. If this throne was built to bury memory, then we don't feed it scars. We bleed it dry. He thrust the ledger into the fissure at the throne's base. The book screamed, pages fluttering violently, ink spilling like blood. Blue and red light surged outward, colliding with Cole's golden glow. The cavern exploded in radiance. The throne cracked wide, shards raining like meteors. The silent arms shrieked without voices, dissolving into dust. Survivors clanged bowls in chaos, desperate, defiant. Cole roared, not with silence but with rage. For the first time his voice was human, broken. You will unmake everything. Jonah staggered, blood pouring from his scar, his body barely holding together. He pressed his forehead against the ledger, whispering, better unmade than erased. The throne shattered further. At its core, not stone but a hollow chamber yawned open, pulsing with a sickly blue glow. And deep inside, a second seat, smaller, older, carved with symbols Jonah recognized from the shadows forged ledger. The Watcher's true throne. The cavern fell silent. Even the bowls ceased. Carla's whisper trembled. This isn't his. It never was. Nia's knuckles whitened on her crutch. Then whose is it? Jonah stared into the hollow seat, veins blazing, scar burning like fire. The ledger pulsed against his chest, whispering a single word. What? He dropped to his knees, choking on blood and ink, his heart hammering with terror and revelation. The hollow throne was not Cole's. It was waiting. The cavern still glowed with aftershock. The hollow throne lay shattered, its black stones scattered like broken teeth across the floor. But within its ruins, the chamber pulsed with a deeper, older light. A small seat carved from the heart of the mountain stood revealed, its surface etched with runes that writhed as if alive, glowing faintly with the same hue as Jonah's veins. The noise army gathered at the edges, bowls clutched tightly, their eyes wide with awe and fear. None dared to step closer. Even Nia, who had cracked every silence with her crutch, hesitated now. Carla's transmitter sparked weakly, her voice a trembling whisper. That's not Cole's throne. That's older. This is what he meant. The citadel wasn't built by him, it was bound around this. Jonah's scar flared, splitting open wider than ever. Blood streamed down his palm, dripping into the dust. His breath came ragged, his chest a battlefield of memory and silence. The ledger in his arms pulsed violently, pages fluttering though no wind stirred. And from the seat came the voice. Not spoken, not heard. It vibrated in his bones, in the marrow of the army around him. A whisper that was also a command. What? Jonah staggered, clutching his head. The word echoed inside his skull, layered in 1,000 voices, as if every name ever written into silence was now speaking through him. He saw visions, streets burning, bowls clashing, the bell falling, the throne remade. And at its center, himself, seated, the ledger glowing on his lap, the city bowing in silence. Nia's hand grabbed his shoulder, dragging him back to reality. Her face was bloodied, her grin feral. Don't you listen to that rock. It's a coffin dressed like a crown. You sit, you die, just slower. But others in the army didn't agree. A deserter fell to his knees, bowl lifted high. If Jonah takes it, we win. Cole's silence breaks, shadows' lies shatter. We'll have a king of noise. More voices rose, fractured and desperate. Some begged Jonah to sit, to claim power and end the war. Others screamed at him to destroy it before it swallowed him. The cavern shook with division, bowls striking in chaotic rhythm, belief splitting like stone under pressure. Carla's voice cut through, sharp and panicked. Jonah, don't you see? This is what Shadow wanted. This is his prophecy. The Watcher's seat was never meant for Cole, it was meant for someone like you. That's why he keeps calling you a curse. You're the key. Jonah fell to his knees before the seat. His blood dripped onto the runes and they flared brighter, drinking it like wine. His veins blazed in response, his chest convulsing with pain and revelation. The ledger writhed open. Pages filled themselves faster than he could read. The boy sits. The boy rules. The boy becomes silence clothed as noise. He slammed it shut, screaming. No. The cavern echoed with his defiance. But the voice from the seat only deepened. Mine. Cole, still standing among the rubble of the hollow throne, bled from his mouth but did not kneel. He laughed, a broken, bitter sound. Do you understand now, boy? You thought me master of silence. But I was only its servant. You break me, you break nothing. Sit and you replace me. The noise army gasped, some in horror, some in rapture. Naya's voice shook with fury. Then don't sit, Jonah. Break the cursed thing before it eats us all. Carla's eyes gleamed with terror. But if he breaks it, every name it holds might vanish too. Every memory, every scar, every truth, we could lose the city's soul forever. The army froze. Mothers clutched children. Deserters gripped bowls tighter. They all looked to Jonah, their faith and fear binding him like chains. Jonah pressed the ledger to his chest, his scar bleeding freely. He whispered, barely audible, if I sit, I betray memory. If I break it, I erase it. Either way, truth dies. His knees trembled. His eyes lifted to the Watcher's seat. For a heartbeat, he saw and standing there, her bowl in her hands, her eyes steady. Noise belongs to the people, not prophets. Jonah raised his hand. Blood dripped from his fingers, spattering the runes. He scrawled into the dust with his own lifeblood. Third path. Not sit. Not break. Carve. The runes flared, the cavern shuddered. The seat pulsed violently as if resisting the idea. But for the first time the voice faltered. Not mine. Not yet. Jonah staggered back, chest heaving. He turned to the army, his voice breaking but clear. The throne is not ours. Not Cole's. Not Shadow's. Not mine. If it was built to bury memory, then we carve memory into it until it can hold nothing else. The bowls clashed wildly, louder than silence should allow. The Watcher's seat trembled. And in the shadows of the cavern, unseen by all but Jonah, the Shadow himself stood watching. His grin wide, his forged ledger glowing. Good, he whispered to himself. Let the boy carve. The deeper he cuts, the easier the seat will bleed. The cavern pulsed like a living lung. The Watcher's seat throbbed with blue light, its runes flaring brighter each time Jonah's blood touched the stone. The army crowded around the edges of the hollow, bowls raised but voices hushed, as though they feared their noise would be swallowed whole. Jonah pressed his palm against the seat, blood running down his wrist. His scar burned like fire, veins glowing blue-white in the dim. He whispered, if this throne was built to bury memory, then I will carve memory into it. It will hold us, not erase us. The ledger pulsed violently. Pages writhed open, words spilling without his hand. The boy writes into silence. The silence writes into him. Jonah forced his own pen down, scratching over the runes with his blood. Names smeared across the surface. And Naya, Carla, deserters, children, every face he could summon. The throne drank them greedily, runes glowing brighter, light surging through the cavern walls. At first the army cheered. Bowls clanged, ragged but alive. Carla cried out, her transmitter sparking. It's working, Jonah. You're rewriting it. But then the runes shifted. The names Jonah had carved twisted, bending into new shapes. Letters bent backward, names smeared into unrecognizable symbols. And then Jonah felt it, burning not just in his hand but in his flesh. He gasped. His veins flared, runes appearing beneath his skin, glowing the same hue as the throne. Carla's face drained of color. Jonah, it's writing you. He staggered, clutching his chest. Every heartbeat carved another line into him. His arms, his ribs, his neck, symbols scorched themselves into his body as though the throne sought to claim him. The seat pulsed harder. The voice returned, layered and inhuman. Mine. Not carved. Not broken. Claimed. Naya hurled her crutch against the stone, screaming. The impact cracked a rune, blue sparks spraying. Let him go, you bastard rock. But the seat only drank deeper. Jonah collapsed to his knees, blood searing down his sides, his skin glowing with shifting runes. His vision blurred into waves of blue. He saw faces, not alive, not dead, but imprisoned. The Citadel's vault of memory pressed against his skull, thousands of names clawing for release. Cole's voice rolled low, bitter but calm. He stood among the rubble, his golden glow dimmed but not extinguished. Do you see now, boy? You are no savior. You are vessel. This is why I called you. This is why the spring chose your scar. The throne does not bend, it consumes. The noise army faltered. Some screamed for Jonah to stop, others begged him to endure. Their bowls clanged in panic, not unity. Carla rushed forward, sparks flying from her rig. She grabbed Jonah's arm, her eyes wild. Fight it. Don't let it right you. Right back. Jonah's chest convulsed. His veins burned like molten fire. With shaking hands he tore the ledger open. The page glowed so bright it seared his eyes. His blood dripped onto the paper, scrawling without his will. The boy becomes seat. The seat becomes boy. No. Jonah screamed. His voice cracked, but for the first time it echoed, not swallowed. He seized the pen, forcing his own words onto the page. I am not throne. I am scar. The page flared. The runes on his skin rippled, some fading, others resisting. The throne shook violently, light exploding from its seams. Naya dragged survivors back as shards of stone rained from the ceiling. He's tearing it apart from the inside. Cole's calm fractured. His silence bled into rage. He thrust his hand toward the throne, golden veins surging. If I cannot rule it, no one will. Better it shatter than belong to scars. The cavern roared. Silence and memory collided in raw force. The seat blazed, half claiming Jonah, half resisting him. His body hovered between collapse and surrender, runes still burning across his skin. Carla screamed over the chaos, her voice raw. Jonah. If you can't hold it, you have to choose, either free the names or burn with them. Jonah's scar split wide, blood flooding down his arm. He pressed his palm to the ledger, writing with his own body. Names must live. Even if I don't. The ledger flared, brighter than the seed itself. The runes on his flesh rippled, bleeding away into the pages. The throne screamed, not with voice but with shattering light. The cavern shook. Cracks raced up the walls. The citadel itself groaned, as though the mountain were tearing itself apart. Jonah collapsed, barely conscious. The ledger lay open beside him, its pages glowing faint blue. The runes on his body faded, leaving scars that pulsed faintly with light. But the seat still stood, cracked, bleeding, waiting. And in the shadowed edges of the cavern, the shadow smiled. His forged ledger flickered with fire. Good, he whispered. Bleed it dry for me, boy. Soon it will be ready. The citadel groaned like a wounded beast. Shards of stone rained from the ceiling, sparks of blue fire leaping from every fissure. The watcher's seat still pulsed, cracked but unbroken, its runes shifting restlessly as though resisting the scar Jonah had forced upon it. The noise army clung to the edges of the hollow, bowls trembling in their hands, faces pale with terror and awe. Jonah lay sprawled on the stone, breath ragged, his skin scorched with glowing scars. The ledger burned beside him, its pages still open, words written in blood and light. He dragged himself upright, each movement tearing fire through his veins. Carla knelt at his side, gripping his arm, her voice sharp with urgency. You can't hold it. The seat isn't breaking, it's waiting. If you keep fighting, it'll drag you under. Jonah's scar dripped blood into the dust. He pressed his palm to the ledger, whispering through clenched teeth, Then I won't fight it. I'll free what it's stolen. The ledger responded with a flare, pages fluttering violently. The runes on the seat quivered, light spilling out like cracks in a dam. Cole staggered from the rubble of the hollow throne, golden veins flickering weakly. His voice was hoarse but steady. You think you can release them? Fool. They are bound too deep. If you open the vault, the watchers will rise. The word struck like thunder. Watchers. The noise army murmured fearfully. Some clutched their bowls tighter, others dropped them, retreating from the seat as though the stone itself had grown teeth. Jonah pressed his bloodied hand against the ledger, forcing his words to carve themselves into its pages. Not silence. Not prophecy. Memory freed. The seat screamed. Light burst from its runes, searing the cavern. Faces appeared again, pressed from the walls. Mothers, children, deserters, long-dead rebels. They mouthed names, their eyes wide with desperate recognition. The army cried out. Some wept, reaching for lost family. Bowls clashed wildly, a storm of grief and defiance. For a heartbeat, it seemed Jonah had succeeded. The Citadel was vomiting memory, disgorging all it had swallowed. But then the light changed. The runes warped, merging the faces into one. The cavern trembled as the seat's voice deepened into something vast, layered with countless tongues. We are the Watcher. We carved silence into stone. We buried noise before it birthed chaos. And you? The light flared, wrapping around Jonah's veins, binding him to the seat. You are the vessel who opens us again. Jonah screamed as runes seared across his chest, deeper this time, carved into bone. His vision filled with images, ancient cloaked figures chiseling the mountain, draining memory into the throne. Their faces were featureless, their eyes hollow pits of light. And in their silence was not peace, but hunger. Carla clutched his shoulders, her face pale with terror. Jonah, stop. You're not freeing them, you're waking them. Naya smashed her crutch against the seat, sparks flying. Then we kill it before it kills him. The seat roared. Blue light surged outward, hurling Naya back, cracking her crutch in half. The army staggered, bowls dropping, sound swallowed in the blast. From the seat rose a figure. It was tall, cloaked in stone and light, its body stitched together from runes and memory. Its face was a shifting mask of all those who had been consumed, dozens of eyes, mouths and scars flickering across its surface. Its voice was the cavern itself. We are Watcher. We do not die. We do not forget. We are silence clothed in memory. Cole fell to his knees, golden glow flickering. For the first time, fear crossed his face. No, you were never meant to wake. The Citadel was the prison. The throne was the lock. The Watcher's many eyes turned on him, then on Jonah, and finally on the trembling army. Noise breaks chains. But noise also feeds us. You have carved well, vessel. Now carve forever. Jonah's veins burned as the Watcher's light flowed into him, trying to root itself in his scar. The ledger in his hands shook violently, pages ripping themselves free, circling him like wings of blood and ink. He gasped, choking on light and darkness all at once. No. I won't be your vessel. Not yours. Not Cole's. Not Shadow's. He scrawled with his last strength into the hovering pages. Watcher wakes. But vessel refuses. The ink flared red. The Watcher reeled, its shifting face contorting. For the first time it shrieked, not with silence but with sound. The cavern cracked, stone raining from above. The noise army screamed, bowls clashing as they fled the hollow. Carla dragged Jonah back, blood smearing across the floor. Naya rose with a broken crutch, limping but defiant. The Watcher towered over the ruins, its body of runes and faces trembling but solidifying. It turned its hollow eyes on Jonah. You refuse. But refusal is still noise. And noise is mine. The cavern plunged into darkness as the Watcher spread its arms wide, drawing the Citadel's veins into its form. And the war for memory shifted into something older. A war against the first silence. The cavern collapsed into shadow. Blue veins along the walls drained into the figure rising from the Watcher's seat, until the Citadel itself looked hollow, starved of light. The army stumbled back, bowls clattering uselessly, their sound swallowed before it could echo. The Watcher stood tall, cloaked in shifting faces. Dozens of eyes blinked open across its body, each belonging to someone lost. Mouths whispered fragments of prayers, screams, songs, all overlapping into a static hum. Carla's rig sparked wildly, feedback shrieking through the hollow before dying. Her voice trembled. It's not just silence, it's every memory twisted into silence. The Citadel wasn't a prison, it was a womb. Jonah staggered upright, scars burning like brands across his chest and arms. His ledger hovered beside him, torn pages circling like wings. Each page flickered with blood-inked names, glowing faint blue. The Watcher's many mouths opened as one. Noise is birth. Noise is chaos. Noise becomes silence. We are the first. We are the end. Its voice was not heard but felt. The noise army collapsed to their knees, clutching their skulls, blood trickling from their ears. Bowls slipped from their hands, clanging dully against the stone, the sound devoured before it traveled. Cole stood trembling, golden glow dimmed to embers. For once there was no command in his eyes, only dread. It was never meant to wake. I only borrowed its silence. But now, his words broke off into a hollow laugh. Now it doesn't need me. The shadow stepped forward from the gloom, forged ledger burning in his hand. His grin was wide, eyes alight with manic triumph. And that's where you're wrong. It always needed us, prophets, vessels, mouths. You gave it silence. You gave it scars. I give it prophecy. Together we are its trinity. Jonah spat blood, his voice raw. You don't serve it. You feed it. And it will eat you too. The Watcher's eyes shifted, some locking on Jonah, others on Shadow, others on the terrified army. Its voice pressed into Jonah's skull like molten iron. Vessel. You opened us. You carved us. Now you bleed us. Sit and you will be first Watcher reborn. The ledger pulsed violently, pages flaring with symbols Jonah had never written. His veins blazed, his scars splitting wider. He dropped to one knee, choking, the seats were pulling at him like chains. Carla grabbed him, shaking hard. Fight it. You're not its vessel. You're not Cole. You're not Shadow. You're Jonah. Naya hurled what remained of her crutch at the Watcher. The wood cracked against its shifting body, swallowed instantly, leaving not even splinters. She snarled, limping forward barehanded. If noise feeds you, then choke on mine. She slammed her fist against a fallen bowl, the clang jagged, imperfect. For the first time the Watcher flinched. One of its many mouths shrieked in dissonance, the sound echoing instead of being swallowed. Jonah's head snapped up. His scars pulsed brighter. He scrawled into the ledger with shaking bloodied hands. Noise that breaks. Noise not prophecy. Noise not silence. Noise jagged. The page flared crimson. The army stirred, bowls clashing again, not in rhythm, not in chant, but in chaos. Offbeat, broken, defiant. The cavern filled with a storm of bad noise, clangs, screams, crashes. The Watcher reeled, its body flickering. Dozens of faces screamed out of sync, their voices breaking into fractured chords. Shadow's grin faltered. No, stop. You weaken it. Cole laughed bitterly, his voice cracked. Yes, that's it. Not prophecy. Not silence. Noise that refuses form. The Watcher's massive arms swung, crashing into the cavern floor. Shockwaves tore through stone, hurling soldiers and deserters against the walls. Dozens fell, bowls shattering into shards. Jonah staggered forward, ledger raised high, his veins blazing like rivers of fire. You wanted a vessel. You wanted me to carve. Then I carve you. He slammed the ledger onto the Watcher's chest. Pages burst outward, wrapping around the monster's body, names glowing on each sheet. The Watcher howled, light searing from its cracks, runes burning. But the ledger screamed too. Pages blackened, curling with smoke, as if writing itself could not contain what Jonah forced into it. Carla screamed, sparks exploding from her rig. Jonah, stop. You'll burn yourself out. Jonah's voice broke, but he shouted anyway, if it means the city remembers, then let me burn. The Watcher staggered, cracks racing across its body. Faces peeled away, flickering back into whispers. The cavern shook violently, the ceiling raining shards of obsidian. And yet, as it buckled, its eyes locked on Jonah. Vessel. Even if you break me, you will never be free. Its light surged one last time, blasting outward. Jonah was hurled back into Carla's arms, blood streaming down his face. The ledger fell, pages charred, glowing faintly in the dust. When the light cleared, the Watcher still stood, wounded, fractured but not destroyed. It began to climb the cavern walls, pulling itself upward toward the city above. The first silence had risen. The Citadel split open. Stone walls groaned as if ribs cracked apart. A column of blue light shot skyward, piercing the night, brighter than the bell's fire had ever been. The city above froze. Families in alleys, deserters in the docks, wardens on patrol, all turned their faces toward the Citadel as the light bled across the skyline. And then came the silence. Not absence of sound. Worse. The city still clanged with bowls, still screamed, still cried. But every sound died inches from its source, smothered before it could carry. Mothers shouted their children's names and heard nothing. Deserters banged bowls until their hands bled, only to hear emptiness. Noise itself had been unmade. From the wound in the Citadel rose the Watcher. It climbed on fractured limbs, its body stitched from runes and faces. Its eyes glowed like hollow stars. The city trembled as its shadow fell across every quarter. Carla's transmitter hissed, sparks leaping before it went dead. She tore it from her chest and hurled it aside. It's choking the airwaves. Nothing will carry while it lives. The noise army stumbled out of the hollow, bowls raised in desperation. They struck them anyway, frantic, chaotic, but the clatter was muted, devoured before it spread. They could only see one another's arms moving, lips shouting, eyes wide with terror. Naya bared her teeth, blood streaking her face. She slammed her broken crutch against the ground. The thud vanished instantly. Her laugh was wild, furious. Can't even hear my own rage. Jonah staggered beside her, blood dripping down his chest, scars glowing faintly. The ledger hung at his side, its charred pages fluttering as though still alive. He whispered, his voice trembling but resolute, "If no sound can carry, then only scars can." He opened the book. Its pages were nearly black, burned at the edges, but still pulsed with faint light. He scrawled with shaking hands. "Noise devoured. City deaf. But memory still breathes." The page glowed faintly. Survivors nearby saw it, their eyes widening, their bowls trembling. They could not hear Jonah's words, but they could see them burned into the ledger. They began to gather, clustering around the book, clinging to the only echo that remained. Above, the Watcher pulled itself fully onto the city streets. Its feet crushed houses into rubble. Its many mouths opened, speaking without sound, and every candle flickered out as though breath had been stolen. Cole stood at the edge of the hollow, his uniform torn, his glow fading. He stared at the titan of silence with hollow eyes. "I kept it chained. I thought I ruled it. But it was only sleeping." His voice cracked into a whisper. "Now nothing rules." Shadow's grin was wider than ever. His forged ledger burned with firelight, casting harsh shadows across his face. He raised it high, his voice carrying somehow when all else failed, prophecy carving through silence. The ledger spoke of the first silence, and it has come. Bow before the end, and you shall not be forgotten. Some among the army fell to their knees, bowls lowered, lips moving in silent prayer. Others struck harder, refusing to kneel though no clang escaped. The city itself split again, between those who surrendered to prophecy and those who clung to scars. Carla grabbed Jonah's arm, her eyes desperate. "The ledger's the only sound left. If you don't write faster, if you don't show them something, they'll all fall." Jonah's bloodied fingers shook over the page. He scrawled furiously. "First silence risen. Bowls muted. But we remember. Scars are louder than silence." The page flared bright blue. The survivors leaned close, reading the words. And one by one they began to carve their own scars into stone, into bowls, into flesh, writing names, memories, truths. No sound but marks that could not be swallowed. Naya dragged her cracked crutch across the ground, gouging deep lines, her teeth bared. "If it won't let us speak, we'll make the whole city bleed words it can't erase." The Watcher paused, its many eyes swiveling toward the scars. Its body rippled with anger, runes shifting violently. Its mouths opened in silent roar, and the city shook. Buildings collapsed, streets split wide. But the marks on the stone glowed faintly, refusing to vanish. Shadow's grin faltered. "No, not writing. Writing is mine." He raised his forged ledger, shouting into the void. "Prophecy is the only scar that lives." The forged ledger flared red, its pages burning, casting a crimson glow across the silent city. Jonah raised his charred book beside it. His veins blazed, his scars split, his voice tearing his throat though no one could hear. Not prophecy. Not silence. Memory. For the first time, two books glowed against the first silence. One forged, one scarred. Their light clashed across the streets, blue against red, chaos against control. The Watcher reared back, its hollow body trembling as the two rival legacies burned in its presence. The city was no longer quiet. Not with sound but with scars of light. The city was lit only by books. Jonah's ledger burned blue, every page a wound scrawled with names. Shadow's forged ledger blazed crimson, prophecy seething like fire. Between them, the Watcher loomed vast, its body a cathedral of faces, runes writhing as it drank the clash of light. Silence devoured every sound, but the light of words carried where voices could not. Citizens poured into the streets, drawn by the glow. Some raised bowls in trembling silence. Others carved names into stone with shards of metal, desperate to cling to memory before it was swallowed. The Watcher's many mouths opened, spilling words not spoken but carved into the air. Noise burns bright, but noise dies. Memory feeds us. Prophecy crowns us. The vessel must choose. Its gaze fell on Jonah, hollow eyes locking on his scars. Shadow stepped forward, laughter curling in his throat, even though no one could hear it. He held his forged ledger high, red light spilling across the city. "You see? Even the first silence bows to prophecy. The boy is finished. His scars are mine to write." Jonah staggered, blood running down his arms. The ledger shook in his hands, pages tearing themselves free to hover around him. He scrawled furiously, his blood smearing the words. "Noise is not prophecy. Noise is not silence. Noise is scars. Memory." The pages flared, blue light lashing out like lightning. The Watcher reeled, dozens of faces screaming silently in dissonance. But Shadow only grinned wider. His forged ledger burned hotter, red light wrapping around Jonah's blue, binding it. The two books spun like twin suns locked in orbit, their light feeding the watcher. Carla screamed silently, grabbing Jonah's arm, shaking him hard. Her lips formed words he could not hear. "It's feeding on both of you." Naya, bloodied and limping, hurled herself between Jonah and Shadow. Her hand struck his chest, her mouth twisting into a snarl. "End this." Shadow's smile faltered. He shoved her aside, crimson fire flaring. "End it? No. Fulfill it." The watcher's body split open, its chest revealing a vast hollow of light and stone. Within it pulsed a throne of runes, larger than the seat below. It was not hollow. It was waiting. "Sit, vessel, or silence devours all." Jonah's scars burned white-hot. His knees buckled. He felt the seat's will pulling him upward, dragging him toward that throne inside the watcher. His ledger trembled, pages curling into ash. He saw Anne's face in the smoke. Naya's bloodied grin. Carla's desperate eyes. The names of thousands etched into his book. If he sat, the city lived, but as his. If he refused, silence swallowed everything. Unless. Jonah scrawled with his last strength, blood blinding his eyes. "Take me. Leave them." The ledger screamed, bursting with light. Its pages tore free, scattering across the city like sparks, each page burning a name into the streets, the walls, the bowls of every survivor. Names etched themselves everywhere, scars no throne could erase. The watcher howled. Its chest split wider, runes flickering. It pulled harder at Jonah, runes branding themselves into his skin. His veins blazed blue-white, his eyes burning with light. Carla lunged forward, tears streaming, clawing at his arm. "Don't do this. If you give it everything, you'll vanish." Jonah smiled faintly, though blood poured from his mouth. He pressed the ledger into her hands. The last words flickered across its charred cover. "Noise is theirs. Memory is theirs. I am nothing." Then the watcher's chest closed around him. The cavern and the city shook as Jonah disappeared into the hollow throne of the first silence. Light exploded skyward, blue and red, tearing clouds apart. Pages rained like ash, burning names into every corner of the city. When the glow faded, Jonah was gone. The watcher stood wounded, fissures glowing faintly, its body trembling as if holding too much memory. Shadow stumbled back, his grin finally broken, his forged ledger dimming. Carla clutched the real ledger to her chest, sobbing silently. Naya leaned against her broken crutch, eyes blazing with grief and fury. In the city, every wall, every bowl, every street now bore scars. Names carved by Jonah's sacrifice, etched in light. Memory was everywhere. The watcher swayed, its many mouths twisting. For the first time its voice cracked. Vessel refused. Vessel devoured. Yet vessel remains within. Its hollow eyes turned toward the horizon. It began to move again, each step shaking the city. But now, every scar glowed against it, resisting its silence. Jonah was gone. But his sacrifice had marked the city forever.